Welcome, everyone. I didn't expect to be on this side of the stage. I've spent the past few days in this auditorium enjoying Greeley Drama's production of Alice in Wonderland. It was fantastic. So it's nice to be back tonight. All right, so we are going to start tonight with a recognition. Our principal of the high school here, Carl Francis, will be presenting Inkwell, which is the literary magazine at the high school. Thank you, Carl. Thanks for testing this before you really get started.
I could yell. There we go. Hi, everybody. I have the pleasure of introducing one of the many wonderful clubs and opportunities that we have for students at Greeley High School. And the one I would like to introduce to you tonight, I'll do a little bit of talking and let our advisor and kids do the primary honor. And that is the Inkwell. The Inkwell is a literary magazine that's been offered here for a long time, since the 80s. And it really focuses on allowing an opportunity for creativity in writing and in art through the literary magazine. So I'm very proud to introduce to you Alicia Goldblatt. She is the co-advisor to the program with Bobby Livingston, who they are both English teachers at Greeley High School. So Alicia is going to introduce her students and the program. Alicia?
Let's make this fit. I'm sure you all came out here to hear all about the Inkwell Literary Magazine. That's why there are so many. So I just want to say a couple quick things, and then I will pass it off to two members of the staff. So Inkwell has been around since 1989, and it was founded by Deb Pinkham, who was a beloved English teacher here. And the purpose is to celebrate creativity and expression, both artistically and in written form. And I think what is especially important about it is that kids spend a tremendous amount of time crafting essays and giving responses that teachers expect or that they think a teacher would want, but there ought to be a chance for kids to just express themselves, not in a rote way or a formulaic way, but in a way that speaks to their creative spirit. And also, given that we're in such a digitalized world, now we have this paper version of something that is a little more permanent. So that has meaning too. And it's a different kind of outlet for a writer or an artist to be able to produce something that is actually distributed in the community and in the school. And there are so many fabulous writers and artists in our community. Sometimes academics and athletics is what is celebrated, which it should be, but it's nice to celebrate creativity also. So what you see on the screen is just last year's cover. And then I thought I would just read a quick poem. This is not by anyone in Inkwell. It's actually by a Chilean poet and physicist who is kind of anti-formula when it comes to poetry. But I just thought it was really apt because it's about young people writing. So it's called Young Poets. Write as you will, in whatever style you like. Too much blood has run under the bridge to go on believing that only one road is right. In poetry, everything is permitted, with only this condition, of course. You have to improve the blank page. It along to Rachel Miles first, and then Emma Hallen, and they're just going to talk very briefly about what the process of putting this magazine.
Miles, and I'm a senior. This is my second year doing Inkwell, and the beginning of our process is advertising for it, so that's through encouraging submissions from the students, through the teachers, and through word of mouth from us and posters on the walls. And then what we're currently in is the reading meeting stage, where we read through five being the best, but we're a little too kind to give ones. And then we decide which ones are going to go in the magazine, and then which ones we're going to leave out. And then we start to collect art from submissions that are encouraged by art teachers from the students. And we go through those and decide which ones are going to be in the magazine. And we also consider how they are in black and white in the magazine. But hopefully in the future we can start printing art in color. So,
All right, my name is Emma Hallen. I'm a junior, and this is my second year doing info. So the layout stage is where the staff we basically print out all submissions, and around the room, we arrange everything in a spiral, starting from the end and winding back down to the beginning. It's where you see it. And it starts to come together. We move things around, we make edits as we see them, we finally give the pieces their names. When we judge them through the reading commissions, the reading meetings, they're judged anonymously to avoid any bias. We give them their names, and we start there, and then we go on to editing. And so editing is where everyone sits down and reads all the pieces. We go through grammar, structure, all the little things that we do. We don't change anything majorly or stop it. And then editing is where put everything onto the computer for the digital thing that eventually becomes the book. And so I put all the edits on there, and it starts becoming Inkwell. And so compiling is basically the digital publishing, the spacing, the borders, all the little mini details that the program doesn't like. And then finally it's off to printers until it's made here.
Thank you so much. I just have a quick question. So if somebody wanted to get a copy of the literary magazine, how would they get a copy?
So the funny thing about that is we printed just enough. We literally have 4 remaining copies. So if you have your hands on one of these, you have a coveted piece of literature. There are some in the library, there's some in the superintendent's office, I believe. So there's a few floating around, but note to self that maybe we'll print a few more next year, because they went quickly.
Wonderful, thank you. And thanks to the students. So we're going to move to the approval of minutes from the November 20th, 2023 meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of November 20, 2023 as presented.
Thanks, Christina. Okay, a second?
second.
Thanks, Annika. Any questions? All right, call the vote. Everyone approves?
I abstain.
Yeah, Anne wasn't at the meeting. Thank you. Okay, so we are now on the first public comment section of today's meeting, and I was wondering, was there anyone signed up for the general public comment? Okay, no signups for the general public comment. So just a reminder, we did have signups. If you haven't had a chance to sign up for the book challenge appeal, there is a sign-up sheet that we'll grab right before we get to that section in the agenda. So last call for the general public comment. Okay. So now we're going to do a presentation that is an update on the new school project status. We have some updates from the last time we met, just last Monday, and then we, later on in the agenda, have a vote on one of the items that we're presenting on for the new school project, and we're just going to bring that up on the screen. Luckily, Jeff's handling that, so hopefully get our technology. And as he's working on it, I'll just provide a little update for everyone here. So as you may be aware, the district has been looking to address our student enrollment issues for a number of years now. And tonight we are just giving a little bit of a history of what got us to this point, and then moving to a vote for an on-campus, a look at an on-campus facility. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, to our tech team, the mid-aisle is not coming up.
Okay, and I guess for everyone following along at home, I guess we get a report that it's hard to hear unless you speak directly into the mic. And I know it makes it a little more uncomfortable to speak directly in the mic in this room because you definitely can hear yourself. So I'm getting used to it myself as we're getting this presentation up. So I'll just get started. So the first review in this presentation is where are we now? How did we get to the point that we are today? As many of you are aware, we put forward a referendum for a new primary school in North Yarmouth that did not pass on November 8th, 2022. We've moved to looking at a short-term plan to address the student enrollments over the next 5 years, which resulted in the portables that were installed outside of MIW over the summer. And we continue to look for additional portables that will need to be added to GMS over this next summer. The Facilities Committee has taken a real long, hard look at what the needs are in the short term and the long term of the district, and continue to use any information that we can get and make available to us to help in those decisions. And so as part of our long-term planning process, we have also continued to look on the campus for additional options. I know it's much more interesting with things to look at, but I can just keep talking. My favorite thing to do. Okay, so what's changed since the last time we looked on campus for a new school project was that our voters approved the new land adjacent to the campus. The 2.3 acres was approved in June. Thank you, voters. And when we looked to update the master site plan, starting over the summer into the fall, we brought in architect Stephen Blatt, who helped put in the portables at MIW over the summer, who's worked on our district for decades now, to take one last look at that parcel and to see if we could put a school there that might meet our district's needs. And so when we started to ask those questions again about what could be done on campus, we looked again at the one campus model. So what we heard back when we asked earlier this year about the potential for putting a school on campus was that yes, in fact, if we were looking at a smaller school, we're looking at a pre-K to first grade size school, that the 2.3 acres that was purchased next to the campus could accommodate that size school. And so the board, being offered that information, started to look towards both the fellow board members and to our community to see if this option would be feasible. So starting in early October, we had conversations with the Facilities Committee to approve looking on campus. We had a joint meeting with both towns to share this idea. We had run into some challenges previously around looking at on-campus due to concerns around traffic congestion and there being enough space for long-term planning. So there's a number of issues that we look to address as a community, as a school board, and with both Town Council and North Yarmouth Joint Select Board to be able to address the campus. So I really do love a good PowerPoint slide. And that's
Not happening. Sorry.
no, that's totally fine. I can just keep talking. Just want to keep making this more awkward for myself. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just keep going. No problem. It'll be up there by the time I get to Christina, and that's really the highlight.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so I'll just keep going until we get you there. So there's a number of factors and features that we would look at both addressing if we were looking on campus. Thank you. I'm now on slide 4. Great, thank you. So there's a number of things, as I was mentioning, that we would look at if we were to consider an on-campus model. So we would be adjusting the grades of the new facility that would be able to accommodate on that space. We'd need to make some site adjustments to both play an athletic space, traffic patterns, maintenance, and then also to be able to support long-term investments if we turn back to looking at the community in the town of Cumberland to support another school. You can go next slide, please. So on November, actually my dates are a little bit out of order. So a few weeks ago, we've had a number of school board meetings. This is our 3rd Monday in a row, so I might get a little lost in time here. We've put forward some recommended next steps, and I was just going to remind everyone of those next steps and, again, what got us here today. So we're looking at an enrollment study to ensure that the projections that we had last received a year or two ago were still in line with the new updated methodology, looking at the latest enrollment and any new information that we had around births. We're also working with both of our towns to understand their building projects that they might have planned to accommodate any additional homes that would be in our communities to build into the enrollment study projections. Those were presented last meeting and will continue to be discussed with both towns. The Facilities Committee met last Friday, last Friday, December 1st, first day of December, to review recommendations from 2 architects that Christina, who is the lead of our Facilities Committee, will be discussing today, what process we use to look at choosing an architect to turn to look on campus for concept design. And then what we're looking at tonight would be for the board to approve the concept design contract with the selected architect. There's still a whole number of steps that we are going to need to be taking place over the next few months to work with and understand what it would mean to put a school building on this campus. So we're going to look to make adjustments and upgrades to sustain the one-campus model, work with the town of Cumberland and the Maine Department of Transportation on infrastructure and other off-site requirements, and then we have to work to create a new financial plan once we decide if we're going to remain with the 80 Gray Road site, which is still on the table, or if we're successful in developing a design that would work for our community on campus. And so today, like I mentioned, we're going to have a presentation by our facilities chair about the concept design that we'd like to enter into to have an architect move forward with a concept design for an on-campus building. So Christina, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Thank you. So the Facilities Committee, we had a process I want to explain to you, and then a little bit of the history of how we got where we're at, and then our recommendation. So you can see on the slide how the Facilities Committee arrived at its recommendation. We're here tonight to recommend a particular architect to create a concept design for a possible on-campus new pre-K-1 elementary school. It's a mouthful. But I want to note, this does not negate the option of an elementary school at the 80 Gray Road in North Yarmouth. Instead, it's creating another option for the board to consider. So they'll have both to consider before they bring it forward to a referendum. So a little bit of history. October 6th this year, Facilities Committee, it was a regular meeting, and we had an all-buildings tour of the campus, and it included that new land that was purchased, the 2.3 acres that the board last year purchased in July 2023. And at that time, there was reconsideration of an on-site new elementary school. The topic was raised. So following that, on November 14th, two architects, Oak Point and Stephen Blatt Architects. They're both architects that the school system has worked with before for different projects on campus. They were both invited to the Facilities Committee to interview, for us to interview them for a proposed new school, 500-student pre-K1, particularly what could they do on that 2.3 acre property. On December 1st, last Friday, the Facilities Committee held those interviews with both firms, architectural firms. So we had a variety of questions we posed to them, and they primarily were about the acreage itself, the site itself, how suitable it would be for the school we need. Parking questions, a lot of traffic questions, size of the school. We recently got the school projections for the population, so we wanted to know how they would address the current as well as the projected school size going into the near future. We asked about estimated cost of the project and the architect firm's availability, both pre- and post-referendum, particularly if we were looking at a possible June referendum. Hasn't been decided yet, June, November. Also, we asked them about the possibilities of expansion, both at this new potential school on site, as well as what would we need to do to the other buildings on campus if we built there. So, the recommendation of the Facility Committee, we unanimously decided to voted to recommend Stephen Blatt Architects to the school board as the architect to create a concept design for a pre-K1 elementary school on the Greeley campus. We felt the strengths of this candidate, this interviewed group, were their high level of experience with our district's needs. They're highly responsive to our questions and the requests that we made. We have high confidence in their comprehensive vision for MSAD 51, and they brought a lot of energy and anticipation of our school's future. So with that, that is our recommendation.
Thank you, Christina. I know we have a item for action later on in the agenda, and we can leave board questions about the presentation maybe for that time. And we're happy to have, obviously we'll have a board discussion about the recommendation, but we have an item for action to discuss further. So the last slide, thank you, Christina, was just the proposed timeline. So I already mentioned a number of these dates that tonight is the date that we're asking for the board approval for the architect contract. Sure. Just get a little closer to the mic. And then the architect will develop a concept, design, and budget. It is, as you can see, a very quick timeline. If it needs to be extended, it will. And then we will work in January with the Facilities Committee and then with the full board to review the project concept and design and accompanying budget. There will be a public hearing, hopefully in February, and then a board vote to continue with the 80 Gray Road site or an on-campus school plan. We are hoping to be able to make that decision in February once we ensure that an on-campus option would be a viable choice for our community. During that time, we'll also then be holding informational meetings, in joint with both towns, and developing a task force to continue to understand and answer any questions that people have about the plan for a new school project with the hopes of having a referendum this June. So lots to come over the next few months. We just wanted to review that quickly tonight. And again, always open for questions. Please email the board, come to a meeting, ask comments. We have lots that is going on over the next few months, and we'll also be looking to hold some community sessions for any questions about the plans for the on-campus option. So that concludes the presentation portion of today's agenda. So we are going to be moving to the public comment that's dedicated to the book challenge. We do have a sign-in. If people have not had a chance to sign in and would like to be making public comment, please do so at this time. I'm going to read over a process for the public comment tonight while Jeff is going to go and retrieve the sign-in sheet. So I know we have a bit of a full house. So those of you who've been here before know that I have a little sheet to read. I'll try to make sure I say it loud enough for everyone to hear. Okay, so the board welcomes and recognizes the value of public comment. To ensure public comment is fair and orderly, we follow procedures outlined in our board policy, BEDH, which was also made available in copy form and linked on today's agenda. We'll ask that all members of the public respect this policy as well. We'll follow it to help keep the meeting civil, respectful, and productive. We also hope that this allows for all community members who would like to speak to be heard. We ask that the speakers use the designated podium when making their comments and speak into the microphone, much like I'm practicing now. If you're interested in speaking, please wait until you're recognized by the chair. Comments by individuals are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at a meeting. A clock will be visible on screen. Oh, do we get the really big clock tonight? Oh, yes. After 3 minutes, the timer will go off, and you will all hear it. It is very loud, and comments should be wrapped up. Please state your name and town of resident before beginning your remarks. I will be reading off the list, so I might handle it that way tonight, but you can also repeat it. Residents and staff members will be given priority over non-residents within the allotted time frame. Our policy allows for 30 total minutes of public comment, although that can be modified at the discretion of the board. I know we have a number of signups tonight, so we'll also be keeping track of the 30 minutes, and then I will ask the board to vote if we are going to continue. So we may get it to the point where maybe some people, if you're repeating things that others have said, if you want to summarize, that would be much appreciated. As a reminder, public comment is not a time for discussion, question and answer, or debate between the board and speakers or the audience. Rather, it is a chance for members of the public to express their opinion on school and educational matters. The board will not comment on remarks made by speakers during the public comment period. Please know that this does not mean that we are not listening, and it does not express any agreement or disagreement with your statement. Lastly, please keep comments respectful and civil. We are neighbors here. Be kind. That includes members of the audience. Please do not interrupt or respond to speakers' comments. We also ask that comments are addressed to myself, the chair. Please do not direct comments at or about individuals in our schools or community. I do want to note that I will stop any comments that are contrary to these rules, and that individuals who disrupt this meeting may be asked to leave. Again, I really appreciate everyone's time tonight. I haven't even looked at the list yet. We have a good list of people who'd like to speak tonight, and again, I really thank you for your time and coming out. The first one on the list, I'm starting with the resident and staff list, is Heather Perkinson.
Good evening. I'm Heather Perkinson. I'm the librarian here at Greeley. I'd like to take a few minutes just to address some of the frequently asked questions I get. What are my qualifications? I am a certified school librarian in the state of Maine. In order to have that license, I have to have a master's degree in library science, which I earned through a UMaine program with the University of South Carolina. I also have a master's degree in language and literacy from National Louis University in Illinois. Additionally, in my bachelor's degree program from Colgate University, I earned a teaching license from the state of New York. I've been teaching in schools and working in libraries since 1989. So how do school librarians choose books for their library? All qualified school librarians follow the same process for choosing books. We are guided by our school's collection development policy to choose materials that support our school's curriculum and the main learning results. The main learning results specify that students should read freely and widely of a range of genres and perspectives. I look at each title I purchase, read the reviews from a variety of expert sources written about the titles, and carefully consider whether it meets the needs of our curriculum or will appeal to my Greeley students. As my students know, my overarching goal is for them to become lifelong readers who know how to find books they enjoy, and as well as books they can learn from. So why do I choose books that feature LGBTQ+ characters for my library? It's important that the full array of books that we have reflect and speak to the needs of all of our students. Some of our students are LGBTQ+. Many are not. I also choose many, many books about heterosexual characters. There are far more of those published. It is crucial, though, that all of my students, regardless of their identity, see themselves represented in the books in our library. I also know that it's important to read about the experiences of people with different identities from our own. That is how we develop empathy and understanding. Now, what if a parent disagrees with my choice of book for the library? I appreciate this. No one knows your kids better than you. Here's what you can do. First, you should talk to your child's librarian. The librarian can put a note in the child's record so that anytime they go to check out a book, the note will pop up and remind the librarian that they are not supposed to check out that book. There's an entirely different process if a parent or community member believes that the book should not be available for any children in the school. We take this process very seriously. The conclusion of this process is what brings us here tonight. A committee with diverse representatives from the community has decided that the book under consideration should stay in the library. Now that decision is being appealed, and the school board members have to decide whether or not to go with the opinions of the committee. I thank the board for their careful consideration and for allowing me to speak tonight.
That was perfectly timed. Okay, you didn't get to hear the buzzer yet. All right. Next, I have Sarah Allenby.
That's a tough act to follow in terms of the applause. I'm Sarah Allenby. I live in Cumberland. I'm here to show my support for our educators, librarians, administrators, and the LGBTQIA+ community, and to urge the school board to reject the book ban request for genderqueer. Individual parents have the right to make choices about what material feels appropriate for their children and their family. They do not get to dictate and limit this for an entire school community. It's crucial that high school students have access to a diversity of ideas and stories and books, to learn, to see themselves represented, to challenge their beliefs, and to better understand those around them. I trust the professionals, like the one who just spoke, our librarians, teachers, and other school staff, to make informed decisions about what material is appropriate for our school libraries. Let's put our attention and resources back where they belong, working together to best serve the academic and social emotional needs of all of our students and our staff. Thank you.
So I have Tig Filson. Okay, thanks, Tig. Brady Hale.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know, I am Brady Hale, a senior. I wasn't going to speak today because I thought, what can a random high school senior add to this conversation? But I am simply frustrated. Growing up as a teenager is already hard enough. Is already hard enough, and you're just making it harder. Anyone entering a library should feel heard and represented, but banning this book removes that feeling for so many students. During my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I went to Cheverus, but then I got the opportunity to come back to Greeley, and I did in a heartbeat. Greeley has an amazing curriculum. It's a great school. It's one of the best schools. We offer so many different classes. We allow students to take classes they're interested in. We allow them to do silos and internships. So when I heard about the possibility of banning a book from the school, I was blown away. And frankly, I am disappointed in the community that we've even gotten to this situation. One of the best things about education is learning what interests us. I love swimming and history, so in my free time, I research both of them. But soccer isn't my favorite thing, so you don't see me researching soccer in my free time. The same thing goes with this book. If you don't like this book, don't read this book. No one is forcing you to read this book. And if you don't want your child reading this book, you have that conversation with them. But don't you dare threaten to take away this book from a school that represents so many students and faculty in this school. Many people have brought up that this book is pornographic. If this book were pornographic, then it'd be promoting sex and sexual ideas. Please forgive me, I don't remember the exact page number, but after the strap-on scene, it goes to talk about how it was not a pleasurable experience and they wish they didn't do it. So if anything, this book promotes the idea of not having sex. When me and my fellow students walk into a library, we should feel represented and heard. The book Genderqueer is a memoir, and there could/are students in Greeley High School and all over the country that this book represents them. If we take away this book, they don't feel represented. And once again, if you don't like this book, don't read this book. Thank you.
So next I have Audrey, I'm going to say Loans. And again, I apologize if I mispronounce somebody's name.
I would think you'd know that by now. Lonis.
No,
My name's Audrey Lonis, and I live in North Yarmouth. I was a member of the district's board of directors from 2000 to 2006. Since my time on the board, many changes have occurred in our society, and board service has become more complex. I'd like to thank all of you for serving on the board. I strongly object to this challenge to the authority and the decisions of our elected board of directors and the professional educational staff. It is clear that a large majority of our community does not support challenges based on the platform of organizations which are from away and out of step with our local ethos. This book challenge appeal has been a waste of time for our school district staff and a distractor from the more important work of classroom education. I support the process outlined in policy IJJ, selection of educational materials, that was followed by the book review committee to make decisions on which books are appropriate for each school's libraries, and support keeping the book Genderqueer in the Greeley High School Library.
Next I have Scott Jordan.
Before we start the clock, Madam Chair, could we please recognize the veterans in the room by saying the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'm sorry, the clock has started.
Can you please reset so I can start then from 3 minutes, since you're not going to do that?
Please reset the clock. Thank you.
Thank you. I've requested the challenge book, Genderqueer. Simply, the book is not age appropriate. I've not said one time anything about banning books. Last Monday night, November 27th, a group of individuals who attended the school board meeting, they decided to utilize public comment to try and state that I'm for banning books. Come on, people, stop the hysteria. This is not about banning books. The school board has local control over policy IJJ to select materials good for all of our district students. Why is there such mounting pressure to provide demoralizing content to our young students? The leaders of the district, you, the members of this board, need to ask yourselves, why is it only legal? And again, I'll repeat myself, why is it only legal to give access to materials such as this to minors in a public and private school libraries? Reading materials like the book Genderqueer seem to be typical for staff at school who seem to be immersed in the progressive ideology due to a host of influencing associations. As a parent at home, it's extremely alarming, a red flag. A child's innocence can never be regained once it's compromised, and that shouldn't happen at school. Could we all agree if a culture war is being fought about library material between concerned citizens and the district staff, we are witnessing a breakdown in the values and morals this district is operating under. Regardless of how many professionals that the district has cited who celebrate these type of materials for minors, the content is simply not appropriate for minors. It's not the special interests who voice their support, because I'm not from away, I'm from Cumberland. It's about parents who are raising their children who find this unacceptable. How many LGBTQ teenagers, parents, or staff state that this one book saves lives? How often has the district policy been manipulated and changed to insinuate this reading material from community concern? I'm going to skip forward. The president of the ALA, American Library Association, Emily Dubinsky, is a self-proclaimed Marxist. This mere fact immediately discredits that organization. She's aggressively promoting an agenda, an ideology. I don't have to refer to their code of ethics to know that this book, Genderqueer, offers far more harm than it does good for a minor. In closing, you know what's easy? It's to gang up on someone and bully them. Standing up for what's right can be hard. Having a mob mentality to gang up and bully someone is easy. It's cowardly. When you stand up, you stand out. You make yourself noticed. It takes courage. Bullies lack the intestinal fortitude to do the hard thing, especially when it's the right thing. Name-calling such as a racist, a homophobe, a bigot, reveals the weakest and lowest common denominator from the immature and irrational. It's the adults in the room who will have the rational and reasoned discussions. Let's take a deep breath and work together. God bless you all.
I have Larry Aferio. And then while Larry is coming up, the next person I have on the list, again, apologies if I'm not saying this right, is Clayton Weld. There's Larry.
Larry Offiero, Cumberland Center. My understanding is the biggest problem people are having is that people do not want to ban books. People say, well, I'm okay with almost any book as long as there's some value in it. Some of you believe that no book should ever be kept out of the library, no matter its content. And I understand how you feel because I used to feel that way. I was always against the censoring of books. But then I did my own research and I discovered something amazing. I discovered that responsible and wise librarians check not only that books are age appropriate, but if they conclude that a book is destructive or dangerous in any way, they will withhold its entry. Imagine that you are a school librarian or a member of the book committee. What would you do about a book like this? It's a book that instructs teenagers on the best way to commit suicide. Worst of all, what would you do, or would you allow a book that portrays all Jewish people as evil, subhuman, and worthy of death? Unbelievably, such a book is currently forced upon Palestinian children in Gaza. Every student in every grade must read this book. There is no book censorship there. I ask you, would you allow such a book in the hands of our students? History has shown that when hatred is indoctrinated, violence is inevitable. Finally, a book like this, Genderqueer, which by every definition is pornographic. The young man said it's not pornographic. Well, I don't believe he read the whole book. When you talk about putting a cock in my mouth, and it was the greatest experience in my life, and on and on and on, page after page, describing how wonderful it is to engage in sex. Statistically, when sexual material is promulgated, promiscuity, in one form or another, is inevitable. You know, I understand your goals for our students, and for the most part, I share those goals. We want our students to be tolerant, respectful, and accepting others, regardless of one's religion or race. And to a large degree, I agree that we should provide students exposure to diversity. I agree with that. However, I do not believe that a pornographic book will help us to achieve these noble goals. How great would it be if we could achieve our noble objectives?
Thank you, Larry.
Not through pornography, but through morally pure, God-centered books that we could all agree upon. Thank you.
So next, I think it's Clayton Weld. I might have gotten that wrong. Okay, somebody's standing up. And after that, I had Katie Simpson. So Clayton. Please let me know if I pronounced that right at all.
Clayton Weed, W-E-D,
Okay.
Skillings Road. Both these gentlemen said a lot of what I was going to say. Diversity is one thing. To turn around and submit this book as diversity, no. This school board needs to really address this as to whether you're going to put forward this type of simplistic material and submit it to your students. Myself and several others here disagree, and I appreciate if you take a real good look at the content and make a decision from there. Thank you.
Hi, Katie, Cumberland. I have 2 kids and GMS, and I have many minutes of things I could say, but I'm going to keep it super brief. Basically, I want to thank the board for all of your work, period. It's a very hard time to serve on school boards, and I see you, and I thank you for your time and your efforts. Thank you for the process that you've led, using an expert committee to address this book challenge, and I urge you to uphold the committee's recommendation and keep genderqueer in the high school library. This process has been fair and professional. Thank you.
Next, we have Zach Bouchard and then Lane Gillespie after that.
Hi, I too just want to thank the school board for all the work, and want to echo what Katie just said. Please do not ban this book. If we were to all ban books that we didn't agree with, there'd be like 4 books left in the library, so please don't ban the book. Thanks.
Lane Gillespie, North Yarmouth. I'm also here to oppose the banning of the book, and also to thank you, the school board, for your time and your never-ending commitment. That's it. Thanks.
I have Jason Curry and then Ann Graham.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, School Board, for all the hard work that you're doing. I've been an employee of the school district for 26 years here as a social studies teacher, and I'm also the parent of a 21-year-old transgender girl. And I'd like to say, I wish my child had read this book in high school. I wish my child had had this resource. All the members of the school board have read this book in preparation for the appeal and now for your final vote. No amount of Persuasal on anybody's part should be able to turn you from what you know, having read the book, as in your conscience what you believe it to say. I would advise you that books like this are important to keep in our school libraries as a reminder, rather than banning them, that people like the author of this memoir not only would have their books banned, but their lifestyles banned. Where you start banning books, the next thing to do is banning people's lifestyles. So I would advise you to remember that. I would also like to make a comment on behalf of my friend and colleague Jackie Young, who is a parent of 2 children in the school district. She wanted me to mention, although she couldn't be here, that representation is important, so is context. This scene has been taken out of context and portrayed as salacious, when in fact the message ends up being that you should feel comfortable saying no to experiences that you try, and you should be comfortable saying, I changed my mind, which is important and empowering to everyone. Thank you for your time.
So as Anne's coming up, we have Mandy Levine after Anne.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kandura, Superintendent Porter, and members of the Cumberland North Yarmouth School Board. I want to thank you for allowing public comment on this important issue. My name is Ann Graham, and I am the state rep for House District 105, which encompasses all of North Yarmouth and the majority of Gray. I am a retired pediatric nurse practitioner. I have lived on Farms Edge Road in North Yarmouth for close to 30 years. My husband, Ron, and I sent all 3 of our sons through MSAD 51. Ron is one of Greeley's soccer coaches and a substitute teacher in the school system. This issue is about trust. It's about trust we put in our teachers, our librarians, our administrators, and our staff to teach our children. Our youth face a complex and often difficult world. Our educators not only teach about math, science, and social studies, but they support our work as parents. All children deserve respect and dignity, no matter their race, ethnicity, gender identity, or sexual orientation. We should trust that our educators do that every day. Banning books that help kids navigate this world does not serve our kids. Rest assured, we are listening in the State House as well. We heard multiple bills that address the concerns the proponents of restricting education have. Each bill had extensive committee hearings and were heard on the House floor and the Senate floor. All these restrictive bills were not passed. Why? Because the majority of my colleagues trust our teachers. We trust our educators. We trust our librarians. I will not dictate how a teacher or a librarian does their job, just as I won't tell a nurse or a doctor how to do their job. I urge you not to let a vocal minority sway your decisions. I want to thank you for your thoughtful deliberation on whether this book should be in our high school library. I want to thank you for listening to the entire community. Please know that the majority of MSAD 51 families trust the work that you and our teachers do to educate our children. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mandy Levine. I'm a resident of Cumberland, and I'm a parent of 2 children here in the district. I want to start out by saying how grateful I am to all of you for serving on our school board at an unprecedented and difficult time. Thank you all so much for your time and your really critical work. I'm here to briefly express my unequivocal support to maintain the book Genderqueer in our high school library. This book examines non-binary gender identity in a way that benefits not only those whose gender identity is non-binary, but also those who wish to better understand non-binary identity. Censorship of this book sets a dangerous precedent that can lead to further limitations of our students' intellectual freedoms. For non-binary students, genderqueer might be the very first time that they see themselves represented in literature. Representation matters, particularly to those of us who belong to minority groups. Banning this book robs them of this validation and representation, potentially reinforcing feelings of isolation and alienation. Banning the book would also perpetuate the stigma and misconceptions surrounding non-binary identities. In contrast, allowing the book to be available encourages discussions that challenge stereotypes and ultimately fosters a more informed and accepting school and ultimately our greater community. And for students who are not gender non-binary, who frankly don't know, this book serves as a resource on non-binary identities, helping readers comprehend and appreciate the tremendous spectrum of gender. By banning it, we deny young adults in our district the opportunity to access information that could potentially broaden their understanding of gender identity. Please do not rely on a handful of out-of-context images that are being used to assert that the book as a whole is pornographic or obscene. Please keep this book in our high school library. Thank you so much.
So I do want to know, we're almost to 30 minutes, and I'm almost through the first of 2 pages. I know people are applauding, and we're going to have to maybe move just a little bit quicker to make sure everyone is able to get heard. So we're not quite at 30 minutes yet. So Carrie Chinchet, and then after that is V. Walsh and May. And please tell me how to pronounce your name when you get up there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Chinkett, and I would like to cede my time to Jen Wiesner, who's a local expert. But I do stand in solidarity with our librarians. Thank you.
Is that okay?
She's on the list.
I'm on the list.
You're on the list.
Jennifer
Okay,
Wiesner.
thank
Yes.
you.
First, I want to thank you to the board for all of your efforts, again, to volunteer time in the service of our youth and our schools, and I am here to retain the book Genderqueer. I'm a Cumberland parent of a Greeley grad and one that attended until 8th grade. I'm an individual and couples therapist. I'm an ASEX certified sexuality therapist, a sexual health educator, a sex and faith educator, consultant, and creator of the Raising Sexually Healthy Children workshop series that has been ever popular in this community and all around Maine, with over 5,000 adults attending since 2015. I assert that public schools and libraries have an obligation to support intellectual freedom and to meet the needs and interests of their entire community. Removing books that provide representation to youth who identify with being genderqueer is like cutting off a lifeline to queer youth, which can lead to increases in suicidality, depression, and anxiety. If this book does not fit with one's value system, we have the right as a parent to suggest to your high schooler that they should avoid the book. If your high schooler has a phone, use of the internet, and watches videos, they have likely seen significantly more concerning material than is in this instructive, medically accurate, and vulnerable book. Books like this and others out there, and books from the past that we have read, make excellent conversations to have with our youth to explore their thoughts, their feelings, and also to share your parental values with them. In the most recent Maine Integrated Health Youth Survey of 2021, it is important to note that the amount of public high school students who may benefit this book are 3.9% of students identified as gay or lesbian in Maine public schools, 12.3% identified as bisexual, 4.9% identified as an identity that wasn't even listed on the survey, and 4.6% identified as questioning their identity. Common Sense Media reports that by age 13, 54% of youth have viewed pornography just on the internet. Sadly, most parents that have attended my workshops reveal they have not even discussed this with their youth and what to avoid. Our time is better spent educating our youth about what healthy sexuality is, the value in diversity, and how all people are not the same in their sexuality, versus banning a book that those who oppose this book can request their child to avoid. Preventing high schoolers who could benefit from accessing this book that explores what teens are already questioning and discussing is a form of persecution. I respectfully ask the board to support our librarians who are experts and the board across the United States who have done to allow them to do their jobs that they are trained to do. Thank you.
right, next up, and I'd like to even correct myself, it's Vi. Right? All right, thank you.
Hello, we're Mai and Vi, and we're co-captains of the Civil Rights Team. But above all else, we are students here at Greeley High School. In a room full of adults, parents, and people who haven't attended a high school in decades, we wanted to share a student's perspective on why the book Genderqueer should be kept in our libraries.
The mission of MSAD is to guide all students as they acquire enthusiasm for learning, assume responsibility for their education, achieve academic excellence, and discover and attain their personal best. This statement is from the Board of Directors. The quote, "Assume responsibility for their education," is something I feel has been lost in the past years. Students should have the right to be curious about anything and everything, whether that is different professional fields, self-identity, and especially books. They have the capabilities to self-censor and guide themselves in their education. Although many fear the possibility of being misguided, there's always support that students can access. The book Genderqueer has been advised for ages 16 and up and is about the author's journey through self-expression and being genderqueer. The explicit scenes are not the focal point of the book, and if you assume so, you are extremely misinterpreting books in general. Most media in this century contains explicit content. In the Great American Read book list, almost every book contains explicit commentary and actions. The Grapes of Wrath, 1989, The Book Thief, Don Quixote, and even Great Expectations by Charles Dickens have explicit content. These books are classic novels and commonly referenced in school and daily life. The only difference that these books have to genderqueer is the characters' sexualities. If you think these people are banning this book for the greater good of students, you are wrong. They are contributing to the erasing of queerness from our community. Queer students exist, and having queer books and queer influences can help them feel less alone in a biased world.
In a world of technology, Gen Z and Gen Alpha learn to navigate the internet on their own through trial and error. Most of us come to this high school with the knowledge on how to use a computer and browse the internet already. So if you think we don't know how to put down a book when we read something we don't like, you're grossly underestimating us. I think it's rather funny that the same people that are constantly telling us to put down our phones and pick up a book are the same people taking those books away from us. To quote our own board of directors once more, the goal of this school is to guide all students as they acquire enthusiasm for learning. How can you expect us to develop enthusiasm for learning, not just in an academic setting, but as we learn in day-to-day life using the tools we get from our education when you are censoring that very education? In one simple statement, if you cannot trust your child with a book due to explicit content, then that is on you as a parent. And you really shouldn't trust them with a phone either. I'd like to say on behalf of students here at Greeley, we trust and support our librarians and teachers. Thank you very much.
Lindsay Walsh.
Hi, my name's Lindsay Walsh, and that's my kid. I want to talk to you about one of our core family values that has been brought up a number of times tonight, trust, and how it is a part of the education system. The town trusts the school board with decisions about the schools and their role in our community, as well as the safety and education of our children. Kids should be able to trust that educators and administrators will provide them with opportunities to learn critical thinking, other concepts, and help them discover their passions, unlock their potential, and ideally to keep them safe. Kids trust their parents to meet their base needs of food, shelter, and clothing, as well as to provide them with a home where they are loved and supported that will always be there for them. Most importantly, kids should be learning to trust themselves. They should be learning to listen to themselves, to get to know themselves, and to come to understand what they need and want in life. They need to know that they are real, they are seen, they are trustworthy, or how else are they supposed to trust themselves? One of the ways I've tried to let my kids know they are trustworthy is through literacy. Books are like pieces of glass. They can be a mirror or a window. We can find ourselves in a character and come to understand ourselves better, just like looking in a mirror. Or we can see a character and know that they are somehow different from us, and we're gifted the opportunity to observe them and learn from them, just like looking through a window. As kids are growing, they're naturally trying on new things, new hairstyles, clothes, ways of thinking, talking, and being. It's vital that they get to see lots of these pieces of glass so they can learn about themselves and come to know which one is a mirror and which one is a window. In order to do that, they need two things. Number one, access to all those pieces of glass. Number two, trust in themselves to know the difference. Both of these things are gifts from the adults in their lives. We trust our children so that they can trust themselves. And we give access to books so they can be brave enough to go searching, knowing that when they come home, they can trust in the love and support that should be there waiting for them no matter what. So I just want to also, in case it wasn't clear, thank you for your time. Thank you for the process that's in place. Thank you to the librarians and the book committee. And it's a slippery slope banning any book or requesting that a book be removed. And I just would respectfully request that we do not begin our way down that path of banning any books or banning any identities. Thank you.
So thank you. We made it through the first page. I did want to ask if anyone on the board would like a motion to continue with public comment past the 30 minutes. Denny would like to motion. Is there a second motion?
I'll second.
Great. We got a second. Then we all vote, right? Okay. Kind of out of practice now. A few minutes gone by. All right. Would the board like to continue with public comment? All in favor? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to continue to page 2. Again, if you would like to summarize your comments or if your comments have already been expressed, please feel free to move on to the next person. But the next on my list is Anthony Vine.
Well, there it is. Anthony Vine, resident of Cumberland, parent of 2 Greeley graduates, a MSAD and Greeley Middle School graduate, and a current high school student here at Greeley. I want to speak about somebody who's never read this book and will find it in their life. In the mid-1970s, at my high school, looking for an athlete's biography or autobiography, I came across a book, The Dave Copay Story. It was about a professional football player who, at the conclusion of his career, came out as gay. And that book was not put there for me, but I happened into it, and I read it. And if you ask me about that book, I can tell you very, very little about it, except for 40-something years, I remember the title, and for 40-something years, I remembered that this man had the courage to tell his story. One of the first professional athletes or professional football players to do so. And that probably spoke to somebody else more than it spoke to me, but I've always remembered it. And I think that books' power is in that it sometimes teaches us lessons that we don't expect, and at the same time helps people who need to find that message of support. Thank you.
Next, I have Eliza Batchelder, followed by Diane Morrison.
Hi, I'm Eliza Batchelder. I'm a North Yarmouth resident. I want to thank the board for your hard work and dedication. And I want to express my support for the continued inclusion of the book Genderqueer in the high school library. Every student deserves to see their stories reflected in the library. And I also want to express my support and appreciation for the amazing library staff in our school district and nationwide as they defend our kids' access to books and learning. Thank you.
So next is Diane Morrison and then George Spino.
Leanne, I'm going to pass because everything's been
Okay. Thanks, Diane. George is up next, and then after George, we have Kit Maloney.
All right, I'd like to start out with a quote from Mark Twain. In the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man, and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid join him, for then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so very fond of new clothes that he spent all his money on them. He only went out when he had the chance to show off his new clothes. One day, two fellows calling themselves weavers came to town. They said that they knew how to weave cloth of the most beautiful colors and patterns. The clothes made from this wonderful cloth would be invisible to everyone who was unfit for the job he held or who was very simple in character. No one was willing to tell the emperor that the swindlers were not making clothes because they would be thought unfit or simple. He sent members of his court one after another, and all reported how splendid the clothes were, even though none of them could see them. Eventually, in a parade, a child pointed out that the emperor had no clothes. The child had the courage to speak out. At that point, everyone acknowledged the truth of the situation. There was a lot of pressure on everyone in the parable to go along with the narrative and popular belief that the clothes were splendid. You are in a similar situation here. The zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, says that if you do not wholeheartedly embrace this one particular book, you are hateful. There are many people in this community that are afraid to speak up or stand here out of fear. You should never judge a book by its cover. And I'm glad that you've all read it because you can now make informed decisions. I believe you will find that there are portions of this book that are highly inappropriate. As a taxpayer in this community, I find it regrettable that no action was taken on this book. I do really believe, and it was clearly communicated, that this book was required to help students who are struggling with their sense of self in a very, very challenging world, and I really believe that's true. Some would argue that this book is a great service to kids in this situation. If that truly is the goal, I would hope that we would have in our library books that reflect the experience of Chloe Cole. And if you look her up, if you don't already know her, anyone going on a life-altering journey deserves to know all the possibilities and be fully informed. We really need to act like logical adults here and examine each situation individually without being swayed by emotional arguments or political agendas. We need an objective criteria on what is appropriate, and that needs to be published to the community at large. You have the opportunity to act courageously, to be a leader, a patriot when it is hard. Would any of us have had the courage and fortitude to weather Valley Forge or other hardships of the Revolution? Could we have charged with Chamberlain in the 20th Maine at the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War to ensure freedom for all people? No matter what happens tonight, it's not going to be the end. We're going to see more of challenges like this, and everyone's time is going to be spent staying in this room and having pages and pages of people willing to speak, and not focusing on what's best for the kids, but on political grandstanding and virtual signaling. Thank you very much for your time.
Kit Maloney, and then I have Rob Hale.
Hi, Kit Maloney, North Yarmouth resident. I hold a master's in gender and social policy. I'm a mother, and I'm elected representative serving on the North Yarmouth Select Board. From these various perspectives, I share my support for our librarians and the use of their training and sought-after judgment to make decisions regarding the inventory of books in Greeley's library. Gender theory is a complex subject matter and often includes concepts that are challenging and confronting. I had once been willing to give a benefit of the doubt to those that wished to challenge books such as Genderqueer, believing that we might hold different perspectives, but that we shared a common and sincere interest in the safety and protection of our children. However, after learning more about this campaign against Genderqueer and having many of the non-North Yarmouth resident proponents of this challenge show up to the North Yarmouth Select Board meeting on October 17th, I have come to see clearly that this campaign is not about protection. It's not really even about this book. It is, unfortunately, about fear, hate, and shame. Fear of what is not understood, hate of that which is different, and an attempt to shame our kids for their curiosity and celebration of that difference. As an elected leader in this community, I want to clearly and unequivocally say on the record that I support our students, all of our students, to safely explore their identities. They have the right to be considered, represented, and appreciated in their library and throughout the Greeley campus. As our children watch us here tonight, may they know that they are cherished and loved for exactly who they are and who they want to be. I wish them all health and safety and remind them of the many resources in our community that are available to support them when they are in need. Thank you so much for this process and for the time and devotion.
So Rob, and then I have Suzanne Hamilton after that.
Rob Hale, North Yarmouth. I stand in support of including the book Genderqueer in our library. It's abundantly clear after 2 school board meetings, a select board meeting, and a town council meeting that this is not about a book. There are remedies for parents who don't want their children to have this book. When we consider the rhetoric that's been used to demonize this book, we've seen this rhetoric used in attacks at Cosmic Ping Pong. We've also seen it used to inspire the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband. We've even seen it tangentially in Lewiston, where a mentally ill shooter believed that he was being called a pedophile. One of the things that's at risk here, even though we have to consider these challenges, is the paradox of tolerance. When we tolerate intolerance, intolerance wins. So I think we should keep that in mind. And ultimately, to quote The Who, the kids are all right.
So I have Suzanne Hamilton and then, okay, thank you, Suzanne. Andrew Baca. And then Peter Scott is after that.
Hello, I'm Andrew Baca. I've been a resident of this town for 26 years, and I'm a teacher at the high school for the last 5 years. I rise to support the inclusion of this book in our library. I think that this school has made a tremendous effort at creating a culture that students can feel comfortable coming to school, empathy from their teachers and their classmates. And I'm concerned about banning books like this, how it might affect those students. I think we all are concerned about big issues in schools, about anxiety and depression in students. I think we have a problem with suicide in young kids. And when kids can come to school and know that they have a place that they can feel comfortable with who they are, I think that is makes it a safer school for those children. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Peter Scott. I'm a social worker here at Greeley High School, where I've worked in support of the social and emotional health of a diverse array of students and families for the last 16 years. I'm here this evening to speak for the books have no tongues, just as the Lorax might say. In line with the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics, which shines particular light on the dignity and worth of each person and the importance of social justice, on May 3rd of this year, the executive director of the main chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, Chris McLaughlin, provided testimony to the Maine legislature, which landed firmly against LD 123 and 1008, both acts that effectively aim to hinder access to certain books. In that testimony, Executive Director McLaughlin made strong arguments that I echo this evening. 1, all students need to feel seen and valued in schools. One way this happens is through representations of diversity in books found on library shelves and in classrooms. 2, 41% of the books banned across the U.S. classrooms and libraries during the 2021-2022 school year contained LGBTQ+ themes, while another 40% involved major characters of color. Allowing one person or group's perspective to dictate what is appropriate just exacerbates the harmful yet very prevalent practices of oppression, discrimination, and shame. What on the surface appears to be efforts to simply protect children are in fact designed to, among other things, disrupt local control, minimize the training and expertise of educators and behavioral health providers, and further marginalize youth from historically underrepresented and oppressed communities. Banning books is an affront to the well-established concepts of access to educational materials, freedom of expression, encouragement of critical thinking, and supporting student intellectual freedom and First Amendment rights. The National Association of Social Workers, Maine, is a strong proponent of parents having the right to set expectations for their own children. However, we oppose the notion that one individual or small group of individuals should have the power to limit access for all the youth of that school. I, Peter Scott, believe that the MSAD 51 School Board will kindly join me in speaking for the books and continue to stand up for making our school a safe, welcoming, and accepting place for all students, families, staff, and community members. Thank you.
So next I have Michael Timmons, and then followed by that, it's hard to read the name, but I think it's Mary.
Looks like a Mary.
Mary. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. It's never too old to learn. I spent 47 years in classrooms and as an administrator, and I ended up being honored by being named Maine's High School Principal of the Year. All of that has made me see just about everything you can see in school and with staff and everyone. The negative beginning, and the only reason I'm going to do that, I'm going to be real careful. I never was fired in anything. So if I say anything that you feel I'm totally wrong on, don't offer to fire me. I don't want a first time in it. This particular book has caused more talk than any other book I think that we've probably ever heard about. There are 58 to 70 school systems that have banned the book, and I heard people say that they were totally against it. But there are people in the country, at least 58 right now, and they also were first in 2 years, the last 2 years. So it isn't, it's something that more than this room has been discussed. However, I'm not going to stand here and get a failing grade, because I believe that we have a wonderful school system. We have a wonderful town to live in. I've lived here for 24 years, and I've been president of the Farmers Club for 18 or 20 years. And I don't think in all that time we've ever had anything but positive with our students. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave by saying that I still don't want any failing grades, but I could go and say, make sure, and I think that you will, 13 of you up there, that you take everything into consideration before you make a final vote. Thank you very much.
So I had a Mary on the list. And then next I had Sandra Porter.
My name is Mary Bellino. I live on Greeley Road. I was a teacher for 30 years. And I must say that in all those 30 years and more, I've never seen the culture change so much as now. You can all agree that our culture has changed tremendously. And I think the root cause of our cultural change is the fact that we've forgotten God. We have forgotten God. God is He's the designer, the maker, the ruler, and the giver of life. And God is for justice. And I noticed when I was looking researching all the books about sexuality, that in every book, before I went to read it, there was always a warning to the reader. Graphic content, be careful, graphic content. But we don't see anything wrong with giving our students these books. Something's wrong with this society, not just this district, but everywhere. It's unbelievable. We've forgotten the holy. We've forgotten the holy and the just and the decent. You know, there's a reason people have different feelings. They're transgender, whatever. That's all new. You know, this is all new in the last 20 years. But I think that there's an answer, and it's with God. But I do think that we have to take seriously you people on the board. It's your responsibility. And I think you can't put power and money behind your decision. And I think a lot of you really, if you were honest with yourselves, would say that you really don't see the rightness of these books in school. And not just that book. But you don't stand for your convictions. I really don't believe that all of you cannot see these books and what the damage that they can do. And I guess I would say that I would advise all of you to pray about your vote, to ask God what is the right thing to do. And that's all I have to say.
So I have Sandra Porter, followed by Tyler McGinley. Oh, I'm going to pass my time. You're going to pass, okay. So then after Sandra, I'll figure out how to say that one after this.
My name is Sandra Porter. I live in Cumberland. I'm mother of 2 Greeley High School graduates. I'm very thankful that they got excellent educations in the Cumberland school system. That was quite some time ago. I believe the school system, for the most part, remains excellent. I want to talk about trusting too much. Do you know sometimes if somebody has gangrene of a leg and the surgeon recommends amputation, that certain surgeons have amputated the wrong leg? Can you believe that? But it's actually happened. Don't you think the patient put too much trust in that surgeon? That's only one example. But I honestly believe that sometimes we folks put too much trust in certain professionals, including librarians. I do believe that the lady who spoke first is a librarian at the Greeley High School, and she seemed extremely well qualified. But there are other equally qualified school librarians that refuse to have the book in their school libraries because it's pornographic. Maybe it's introductory pornography rather than full-blown pornography. But why would you want even introductory pornography as part of the school curriculum? Does that make sense? Not to me. And I think it's important that that the head of the school board, that those people in charge on the people on the stage, let me just say that, I don't want to name one person. I think it's important where they agree that they would immediately remove a book from the school library if it dealt with how to commit suicide or how to make a bomb. They need to recognize that it's harmful. Pornography is harmful to children, whether they're in kindergarten, whether they're in elementary, junior high, or high.
So the next on the list is Vevno Dukes. Oh, thank you. Please, when you approach, let me know how to correctly pronounce your name. My apologies. And after that is Katie Murphy, followed by Fortuna Mueller.
It's Vernon Dukes.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Vernon.
I live in Cumberland. Been here 8 years. 37. Do you know what the number 37 represents? 37 is the amount of time that parents spend with their children without mobile devices in their hands. A week. 37. 34. That's where Maine is ranked in the country. 34. So what? Greeley's 1, 2, 3? Fantastic. They're 1, 2, or 3 of mediocrity. We've stopped actually educating our children. We are now number 34 in the world. There's something wrong with our educational system. We're not focusing on education. We're focusing on books. Books that don't help our kids get any smarter. Not a one of them. And I don't really care what the book is. What I care about is that our children are getting dumber and dumber and dumber every year. The numbers show it. As a business person who deals with these young people on a regular basis, it's infuriating what they don't know. Infuriating. As parents, our job is to educate our children, not you, SAD 51. It's your job as a parent to be educating your children. If I had a conversation with a 15-year-old online that mirrored that book, that man over there would arrest me and throw me in jail. And I don't care what if you're gay, if you're transgender, I don't care. I love everybody. Okay? But I love our children more. And we are not focusing on our children. We're focusing on all this other bullshit. But the numbers are bearing it out. 34. Last year, we were 28. The year before that, 27. We're going in the wrong direction in education. We got to fix the problem.
So I had Katie Murphy, followed by Fortunate Mueller and Shauna Mueller.
Good evening and thank you. My name's Katie Murphy. I've had 2 children in the MSAD 51 school system, and as you can see, it's been a while since I've had direct contact with the student population. But back 25 years ago, I had, and still have, dear friends whose trans son started as a freshman in Greeley. At that time, support was really non-existent, and he only lasted a year. He ended up graduating from another Maine high school. He's now a producer and editor for television and the film industry, living and working in New York City. And I tell you what, it's thrilling to see his name when the credits roll at the end of a series episode or a movie. And who gets credit for nurturing this young man's talent during his high school years? Not Greeley. What a lost opportunity. I'd like to believe that this community is more enlightened now after almost 25 years, and I believe it is for the most part. I'm really proud to know this talented young man. I've known him since he was born. I can't imagine what life was probably like for him in Greeley as a questioning and lonely young person with few, if any, resources. Let's let our kids find what they need here with peers, teachers, staff, and families who support them. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your patience tonight. My name is Fortunat. I'm a resident of North Yarmouth. I have two amazing children at Greeley Middle School. As parents, I believe that my wife and I have a really important role to play in understanding what our children are learning in school, what they're reading, and how that relates to our family's values and beliefs. We do that by being curious and by engaging with our children in frank, open, and honest conversations about what they're reading, what they're learning, what they're consuming in school and beyond. As parents, we have the right and the responsibility to engage with these things with our children, to provide context to help them understand the material. We don't claim for ourselves the right to police what other people's children are learning or reading. We don't advocate for censorship or banning books that make us uncomfortable or that we disagree with. I support our teachers and our librarians and their efforts to create a school community where every student feels safe and welcome, and where all of our children can access age-appropriate books which help them form a secure identity and a healthy sense of self. I ask the board to vote to support the decision of the committee, support our students, and reject calls to ban books from our school library.
So it looked like Shauna was passing, and then we had Steve Moriarty, followed by Jen Jonico. And I should know how to pronounce it. You're going to yield too. All right, Steve. Great. Steve's coming up. And then we have Lori and Witten after that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. My name is Steve Moriarty from 12 Oak Street in Cumberland. I'm happy to be here before you this evening. I want to thank the board in particular for the seriousness and respectfulness in which you have received this objection to the retention of a particular volume in our library. Your decision to appoint a review committee was carefully considered and responsible. I'm very pleased that you did so. I'm particularly grateful to the members of that committee for the thoroughness and the time that they invested in handling the task assigned. I absolutely support the decision of the review committee and urge you to do the same. To educate is to challenge and to inform, and sometimes that triggers controversy. This is one of those times. They are, intermittently, unavoidable. But as a 40-plus year resident of Cumberland, I have an ongoing, strong interest in the continuing vitality and health of this school system. And I believe that offering our students a range of options and a range of choices in what they choose to read, what they choose to learn, is a sign of strength and is an indication of the proper way in which to fulfill our mission. So in the interest of brevity, I stand shoulder to shoulder with those who have preceded me and who have endorsed the retention of this book in our high school library for all the reasons that they so carefully and eloquently articulated. Thank you.
So we have Lorian approaching, and then next we have Lucy Noonan.
Thank you. I will be brief because so many people have said really wonderful things beforehand, but my name is Lorian Witten, and I am a resident of North Yarmouth. And the reason why I came up is because I'm also a licensed therapist, and I have been working with people who identify as part of the queer community for almost 15 years. And so I felt like it was really important to speak on behalf of what I hear so often from my clients. They feel othered, and they don't feel often that they belong, and their mental health obviously suffers greatly because of that. And so books that show them who they are or who they can be is really important, and keeping this book in the library, I know, will also help them be able to see aspects of who they are and not feel as othered. Thank you.
My name is Lucy Noonan. I'm a resident of Cumberland, and I'm a student here at Greeley in the senior class. I'm here to encourage you to not ban the book Gender Queer. This proposed banning isn't just about this book, although the banning of this book would be a restriction on LGBTQ+ education and expression. The proposed banning is testing the waters of this district. We live in a country with numerous freedoms, and book bannings and those who support them are tearing those freedoms down one by one. It starts with this book, Gender Queer, where one person said they didn't like it and didn't want it in our schools. Well then, what's next? Because there will be another book on the table to be banned, and another, and another, and another. If each individual person wants to ban a book, there would be no books left. Everyone has an opinion and a choice. They have the free will to choose which books to read or not, which books to recommend to others and deter them from reading. No one has the right to take away that choice for anyone else. And I am here to say that I am here, I am queer, I am non-binary, and I will not let this stand. So please, for all of the students at Greeley High School, all the queer students at Greeley High School, and for all of the books yet to be banned, I urge you not to ban Gender Queer. Thank you.
I'm Dave Noonan, Lucy's dad, and I just found it quite interesting. The only thing I'm going to say, everybody said a lot of really good stuff, but I find it very interesting that all the students that have spoken here tonight have been in favor of not banning books, so I think that's kind of a little bit of a hint. Thank you.
Next, I have Jocelyn O'Connor, followed by Jill O'Connor.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn O'Connor. I'm a Cumberland resident. Up until this year, I attended Greeley. I've been openly queer at school now for a few years. I left the Cumberland school system because it became an uncomfortable and uninviting environment. Kids are constantly making jokes and remarks that are insensitive and homophobic. Banning books that tell stories like Maya Koababe's that could change people's perspectives on the LGBTQIA+ community is harmful and invalidating. Giving power to people who want to silence others' voices could push more kids like me out of the school. My sexuality was not influenced by words on a page, but those words felt validating and safe. I hope you'll put the safety and comfort of my peers and friends before preferences of adults that don't attend the school or have access to its library. Thank you.
That's my kid.
Sorry, I have to get my notes. I'm Jill O'Connor. I'm a resident of Cumberland, parent of 2 kids, one in Greeley schools. Thank you for your service time and hearing all of this. Someone asked for a clear set of rules for materials, deciding whether something should be considered pornographic or obscene, and there is something. The Supreme Court has the Miller test. The Miller test is a 3-pronged obscenity test, and it asks for a work to be considered as a whole. You don't take one piece, you don't take one panel, you don't take one quote, take it out of context and call it pornographic or obscene. It must be considered as an entire work and not be considered prurient. Prurient, for those who don't know, is incredibly lascivious or erotic, abnormally and healthily depicting sexuality. If you have read this entire book and not just looked at a panel someone showed you, you would know that as an entire work, it is none of those things. It is someone's experience going through a lot of questioning. The second prong says that something can't be patently offensive. Again, that's a little bit more subjective. A lot of people clearly find some of this stuff patently offensive, but as you can hear from the students and the people who are being represented by this book, I don't think that one holds. And the last one is that a reasonable person would not find the matter taken as a whole serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And clearly this book has some very real value to the people for whom it was written. So there is a Miller test. You can look it up, and maybe it can satisfy some of these claims that something is obscene. So I will end this by saying that my child's not an ideology. She's not a concept. She's a person. She deserves representation, as do many other kids. And she and I can talk about what it is that she can and can't read, or wants to read, or who she is, but I don't get to decide that for someone else. Thanks.
Next, I have Mike Perfetti, followed by Ashley Schumacher. Pass on Mike. Ashley? Ashley. Jamie Andrews. And then after that, Stacy Cock. Yeah, please don't.
Hi, I'm Jamie Andrews. I'm from Cumberland. I just have a story to tell. I work with a lot of people. I have to have a lot of tough conversations on the phone. And I was talking to a person about, a month ago. And we were just chit-chatting, and a lot of times people tell me more stuff than they need to. And he told me that he had been, removed from his home. He was living by himself in an apartment. And then we sort of chit-chatted a little bit more, and he was saying that he was trans. And I said, congratulations. And there was a long pause, and I thought, oh, whoops, I stepped in it. And I realized he was crying because no one had told him that. And that's why this book is important, because for the kids who don't need it, they don't need it. But for the kids who do need it, they need it.
Hi, my name is Stacy Cock. I live in North Yarmouth. I have 2 children in the schools, a 7th grader and a 1st grader. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear from members of the community on this important issue. I've thought about lots of things that I wanted to say, but everyone's done a great job, so I'm going to keep this really short. I'm here to register my support for keeping this book in the Greeley High School Library. I support our library staff to make decisions about what books should be included in the library. But I also went ahead and read Genderqueer from cover to cover, and my biggest takeaway at multiple times during reading the book was gratefulness that this book is available to our teenagers, including my children, when they are in high school. I only wish that a book like this had been available to me and my friends 3 decades ago when I was in high school. It would have made a significant difference in a lot of people's lives. Not only do I oppose challenging our our librarians and the committee's decisions, but I oppose the banning of this particular book. Thank you.
So I've reached the end of our residents and staff sign up. I know there's some other people that came in who may be residents or students who may not have gotten a chance to sign up. Was there anybody else who is a resident or staff or student who'd like to speak? Okay. So I do have, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Can I come up? Sure. Oh, actually, Sarah, I saw your name on the non-resident page. Okay.
All right. Hi. Good evening. Sarah Russell. I have two children. I live in Cumberland, and I have two kids at Greeley, a senior and a seventh grader. Thank you all for your time tonight. It's a long evening, but I just want to say that I understand that Genderqueer as a book can be uncomfortable. It's different. It represents change, and change can be uncomfortable. It makes us fearful of how that change will directly affect us and our loved ones. But here's the thing, we cannot dictate policy, public policy, through fear. And fear cannot dictate what books are available for everybody, for all patrons in the library. So the magic of a library is that it is sacred and it is secret. It's a beautiful thing. Library is probably the only place left where what we read is not tracked. It's a place where kids can go and explore and access books that they might not be able to access under the nose of their parents, possibly. It allows them to learn and grow and understand differences. And yeah, genderqueer, it's different, but is it obscene? Thank you to the Supreme Court, Miller. We know that it's not, because taken as a whole, it adds value. It effectively, the value it brings is that it grapples with the hardships of coming out, of the confusion of teen crushes, the challenges of being non-binary in a very, very binary world. So yeah, genderqueer is different, but to be accused of porn, the dictionary's definition of porn is books, magazines, films, etc., with no artistic value, okay? And that describes and shows sexual acts. The point is the value piece, and the synonym, by the way, for porn is smut. So to argue that genderqueer is obscene pornographic smut is to be in full denial of today's sexual and gender environment. When we challenge genderqueer and other uncomfortable books and try to move these books off the public shelf, what we are saying to our young kids who identify with these narratives is that we don't want your story. We don't want you as you define yourself. And that's just wrong and hurtful. So thank you to the school board for this process. Thank you to the book review committee. I obviously support the committee's recommendation and hope you do too. Thank you.
Okay, so we have completed the residents and staff public comment. Would the board like to make a motion to continue? It looks like we may have 4 non-residents who signed up for public comment. Does somebody want a motion to continue?
I'll move to continue public comment with non-residents.
With non-residents. Would anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of continuing public comment for non-residents? So it's not a majority. Okay. So we'll not continue public comment for non-residents. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know I really appreciate everyone taking their time, and I want to thank the students as well for speaking. Are you a non-resident? If you're not a resident of the school district, Per policy, residents are prioritized. Did you get a copy of the policy too? So the next item is the items for action. We're going to move on for the vote on the book challenge. So as a reminder, so yes, we have a list of the... Okay, so we're going to move on with the challenge to the book genderqueer. So as we've moved on to our item for action, the vote on the book challenge. When the challenge was filed on the book genderqueer, which is located in the high school library collection, policy IJJ, a review committee was formed, met, and discussed the challenge. The committee's membership met the policy requirements, including a curriculum leader, an administrator, a librarian, a teacher, and a community member. That committee unanimously recommended that the book remain in the high school library, and the results were shared with Superintendent Porter and the complainant. The complainant then appealed the decision. That prompted this appeal process, which is being done following policy IJJ. Each member of the board received a copy of the challenge book on November 20th and was requested to read the book by today, December 4th. At last week's meeting, we heard from both a complainant and a representative of the review committee, and the board asked clarifying questions of both. At tonight's meeting, the board just had public comments specifically about the book, and then we are now deliberating in public to vote on the appeal. The board was not asked for a book report, only to vote on the committee's recommendation. So I would like to ask for a motion.
I will move to accept the recommendation from the review committee that the book Genderqueer remain available in the Greeley High School Library with no changes in the access to the book.
A second. So we had a motion and we had a second, and now I'm giving the board the opportunity if they would like to make any comments about the book or the book appeal.
Okay, well, since I made the motion, I'll go first. All right, here we go. First of all, I would like, before I even begin, I would like to assure everyone who is listening, especially Mr. Jordan, that I have read the book. You can see I've got lots of notes. I have chosen to take, as I'm sure that everyone else on this board with me, I've chosen to take this process very seriously. I actually did pray before this because that's who I am. So I am speaking for myself. I am not speaking for anyone else on this board. I am not speaking for anyone who, what I think they want to hear. This is my process, and this is how I came to this decision. First of all, I worked through the review committee's report, and I appreciated that they just went through policy IJJ and established that the book fits the criteria as outlined in the policy. I also looked at not just the criteria, but at the beginning of policy IJJ, it says that books should provide enrichment opportunities that expand students' interests and encourage lifelong learning. I can say that my personal response to this book meets that. And I realize this is not about adults reading it, this is about the teens, the high schoolers, but I actually feel like I'm a better person for having read this book, and I feel that it fits policy IJJ. So then I moved on to the appeal itself, based on the committee's report. It took me a while to sort of parse out from the appeal the primary arguments, the ones that were most cogent to the book itself. And what I really took from Mr. Jordan's appeal is, none of us can argue that there is sexual content in this book. Of course there is sexual content in this book. And I agree with Mr. Jordan that policy IJJ doesn't directly address that. So I had to ask myself, first of all, Does this book fall under the category of pornography? If it does, we're done. That book should not be in this library. So I needed to ask myself that. If I had just been shown this book without context, I would have been very surprised. I would have been concerned. And I would certainly want to know what it is about the book that outweighs the sexual content, because I do believe that for a book with this sort of content to be in it, there must be something greater than that content. I read the book, contemplated it, and I've arrived at the decision that it does not fall under the category of pornography, primarily because I looked up the definitions, and for the most part, everything I found talked about how pornography is content that is intended to stimulate erotic or sexual excitement rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. The page most in question, page 167, certainly is sexual in nature, but it also includes the words written by the author, "I can't feel anything." And right there, to me, what that says is the author did not put it in because it was stimulating, but actually the opposite, which has been referenced tonight. So the irony is that what makes this sexual experience a pivotal moment in the author's life is the total lack of sexual excitement that the author was experiencing. So if I feel that the book is not pornographic, then I move to Mr. Jordan's next argument, which is that it is not age appropriate. In his original challenge, the author stated that the material is not age appropriate and that the author of the book stated it is for 18 and up. There's a lot of tension about that because, of course, there's an interview that has been cited many times in which the author says, "When I was on a book tour in 2019, I was asked many times, 'What age of reader do you recommend this book for?' I would generally answer high school and above, but the truth is the readers I primarily wrote it for were my own parents and extended family." I believe that Mr. Jordan takes that to mean that because the author wrote it for parents and family, that precludes the audience that might also read it. And I actually disagree, because I think one of the most beautiful things about literature is that often you write it for yourself, maybe a very small group of people, and then it lands in someone's hands, much like maybe a biography of a gay athlete. And the person who reads it, it's like it's for them. And that is the beauty of literature. And so I don't agree with the argument that just because of the intended audience that automatically makes it inappropriate. I also saw or read an interview with the author in Pen America, where the author stated, and some people have referenced this, if I had had a book to read like this, specifically when I was a freshman in high school, it would have saved me years of questioning and confusion about my identity and could have really helped me figure out who I was and how I wanted to interact with people through the world and who I wanted to be much sooner. I didn't really figure that stuff out until I was in my late 20s. And I actually, the author has not said this, but as I read that, I had to wonder if that sexual experience on page 167 would have even happened if this book had been available to the author as a teen. There's also, in my mind, a discrepancy between the word child and the word minor. In another interview, also with the Washington Post, the author states that Genderqueer is a comic and in full color, but that doesn't mean it's for children. I originally wrote it for my parents and then for older teens who were already asking these questions about themselves. I don't recommend this book for kids. That quote has been used many times to say that it should not be in the hands of minors. I actually looked up the word child and the word kid, and I was kind of surprised to note that in no definition does kid or child specify under 18. The definitions are someone who is between the ages of infancy and puberty. And just as on a personal note, I think that is sort of culturally accepted, that a child is that, not a specified age, but more where they are in life. I was the children's ministry director at our church for many, many years, and that ministry went up through 5th grade. And it was just sort of understood that that would be a child, 6th through 12th grade was a youth ministry. So I don't agree with the argument that just because she said it's not for kids, that means that it is not appropriate for anyone under the age of 18. So I do not believe that it is pornographic, and I do not believe that it is not age appropriate for teens. The last thing I want to say, and I think my board members, I know I'm going on a little bit here, in my process, I found myself really considering the appeal itself. If anyone was watching or here last week, I asked Mr. Jordan for clarification on his contention in both his written and verbal appeal that page 167 depicts children engaged in fellatio. Mr. Jordan's answer was because the author said it in interviews. And when I pointed out to him that on page 162, the author talks about being 25 at the time, Mr. Jordan appeared to have no idea what I was talking about and claimed to not be able to find that page. I find that very odd. It was a flag for me because every other page that he had identified in his challenge aligned with what he was talking about. So I don't really understand why he wasn't able to find page 162. And I had to draw my conclusion that meant that Mr. Jordan has not carefully read the book, perhaps has read every page, but in his original challenge, he answered yes to the question, have you read the book, the entire book? He wrote yes, and I just because of that moment, I don't feel that he has, and then therefore that is false information. I also would like to note that we asked Mr. Jordan to send us links to those interviews. That was a week ago, and as of yet, we still have not received those. The written appeal itself was full of typos, quotations that were incomplete, sentences that were inconclusive and discordant. I had to reread it several times. I mentioned a moment ago that I had to try to glean Mr. Jordan's primary arguments, and I really had to reread the appeal several times to get that. It's been at least 5 months, and I feel that a much more cogent argument could have been presented in this case. And finally, it's my understanding that Mr. Jordan was involved in the creation of an online poster, if you want to call it that, that depicts what appears to be a 6-year-old, maybe, child who is sitting in front of the book. And what I don't understand is why, if the board, the district is being accused of putting the book in front of minors, and yet here's a picture of the book in front of a minor. The reason that I say that it's associated with you is because of the main Republican Party Cumberland County chapter, which said, contact Mr. Jordan, a concerned parent. And Mr. McBriarty also identified you as the person involved in this picture, which has a child in front of the book. I took this process very, very seriously. I wish I could say the same for you.
Is there anyone else?
I just had a few remarks that I wanted to make. The first was that I actually wanted to give appreciation for rereading this book. I had read Genderqueer previously before this book challenge, and this challenge allowed me the opportunity to read it in a slower, more critical manner than I did the first time through. And as a result, I leave finding even more value to the educational aspects of this work than I had previously. First and foremost, the author outlines struggles around gender and sexual identity that any person can experience, and it's also important to note that the author was raised in a more liberal and progressive family and school environment. So when you consider the fact that we may have students in our district or in other schools that don't have that same sort of support, thinking about the challenges that the author went through could just be magnified. I think that the book also provides a lot of value for our students who also aren't questioning their gender or their sexual identity. It gives value discussing the real trauma of menstruation and gynecological exams that our students will experience in high school and beyond. It also depicts amazing conversations regarding consent, not just consent relating to dating sexual relationships, but also relating to friend and other emotional connections. I really struggled with the appeal process because I felt as though a majority of the points listed by the complainant were related to criticism of the author's family of origin and parental experience that they had, and the Waldorf School and Founders Philosophy versus the actual content of the book. I feel that there was attempts to sensationalize those explicit content chapter or pages that have already been mentioned without looking at the subject matter as a whole. So I accept the recommendation of the committee, and I just want to thank everyone who came out to talk for or against. I know that it takes a lot for both, but particularly our students who came out. Thank you.
So I will be voting yes to keep the book genderqueer in the GHS library. For me, banning books has been an over-my-dead-body proposition for much longer than I've been on this board. We can pretend that this is not book banning. We could consider irrelevant hypotheticals like books about making bombs. The fact of the matter is that we are being asked to make a judgment about removing one particular book from our library and that our librarians have deemed to have educational merit and is age-appropriate for our high school students. I'm a firm believer in academic freedom, and I trust our librarians to make good, responsible decisions about educational materials in our libraries. They have an expertise that I do not have, and I suspect most of us here do not have, and I respect that. I feel that this rationale is sufficient for my decision, and I know I should leave it at that. However, please indulge me for a couple of minutes as I feel compelled to share my thoughts about the book. I appreciate the complainant bringing this book to my attention. It is probably not a book that I would have picked up otherwise, and I really enjoyed it. There was someone last week during public comment who mentioned the dual benefit of providing representation in the library to students who may relate to the content, and for someone who may not relate to the author, it offers the opportunity to understand and empathize with someone who has had a very different lived experience. As a cisgender heterosexual man, I've had the privilege of not having to confront the issues that the author encountered on their journey to identifying as non-binary and asexual. I was impressed by the thoughtful and nuanced questions that the author posed. I also appreciated that the book framed the complex issues that it addressed by drawing from the fields of psychology, sociology, and neuroscience. It did this all in a way that was relatable to young people. I want to acknowledge, too, that the content on pages 166 and 167, and these are the pages that have been referenced at multiple meetings so far, they made me feel uncomfortable. And I had to give some thought about how I felt about the inclusion of those pages in the book. Ultimately, I landed on a few things. First, I think these pages and others throughout the book serve a useful purpose in demonstrating the author's discomfort with sexuality. Second, my discomfort with the 2 pages of the book should not dictate whether others should be able to access the book. If I had kids in high school and I felt that strongly about them not getting the book from the library, there's a process for that. Third, Many great artistic works have made people feel uncomfortable. This is how we challenge ourselves and push boundaries. I think I was in middle school when I read Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. This is a book that covers similar territory, exploring the issues of identity and including a graphic scene depicting her rape as a child. Like Genderqueer, it is a book that has frequently been challenged, and I would never support its removal from our educational materials. I think back, too, to my high school years when I read my fair share of Stephen King books, which have no shortage of graphic, violent, and sexual material that surely make readers uncomfortable. I look today, and the GHS library currently has 63 Stephen King books available to students. I'm sure that we could cherry-pick objectionable material from those books, but I suspect that nobody is interested in that. Finally, thanks to everyone who came out tonight. It is exciting to see such passion about education in our community.
First, I'd like to say thank you for all coming to hear about the new school. Really appreciate that very much. Just happened. I'd like to make a lot of points have been made that I agree with, so I'll keep it brief. I want to start with two facts that I know. First fact, there are different kinds of humans. It's just, there are. There are different ways of living, there are different ways of acting. My colleagues, my friends, my own child, they're going to be different from me. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, they're different in ways I may like and ways I may not like. Fact number two, there is no single set of morals. We've gotten a lot of comments, a lot of emails about immorality. It may be immoral is how you feel, but that's according to your set of morals, and there are other sets. Doesn't mean my set's wrong or your set's wrong, they're just different. So, on that note, I come to the conclusion people are different. To be human is to have questions. We need to allow students and adults to read and question. And then, yes, in turn, once they've read and they have questions and they have more questions, they should feel free to turn to their friends, to their teachers, and yes, to their parents to ask what they think. But in the end, they're going to decide and think what they want. We can't decide for them. But we need to give them the information access so that they can decide for themselves. And to me, that's what education is. Thank you.
Sure. Annika.
So I just want to echo, I'm sure I'll echo a number of things that have already been said on the stage tonight, but maybe there will be a couple new things for you all in my comments as well. So certainly want to thank you all for coming out tonight and speaking with us, and also express my appreciation for rereading this book. When I was running for school board in the spring, the question that I was asked hands down most from everyone who I spoke to was where I stood on book banning. I honestly did not expect to be here in this position tonight at that time, and was very clear that I would not be banning books from our library. But it also encouraged me at that time to read books that were being challenged and banned elsewhere in the nation at that time. So I read Genderqueer, and I appreciated the opportunity to read it again as part of this process. I think what all of this has shown me is that this process, the policy IJJ, and the procedure outlined are working. The policy, as some people may know, was revised in February of this year. And I would like to thank the members of last year's board, actually all of whom I think had a primary hand working in this are no longer on the board, but certainly want to thank them for that work that they did to update this policy, which included then policy committee members Mike Williams, Vanessa Bryant, the policy committee chair at the time, Jared Levin, and the board chair at the time, Jason Record. IJJ is a selection process for identifying educational materials to include in classrooms and libraries, as we all know. So books and other materials that don't meet the criteria aren't included. This book, in my opinion, does meet those criteria to be available through our high school library, the only place it's available in our schools. And our professional certified library media specialist at the high school followed this policy, and that was demonstrated and affirmed by the committee. As reported in its response to the book challenge, the committee read a wide range of reviews, reviewed the material in light of our educational mission and vision, and in line with the selection criteria and policy IJJ, specifically citing criteria A, B, C, D, G, I, J, and K. The book is the winner of the American Library Association Stonewall Honor and the ALA Young Adult Library Services Association Alex Award. Regarding the age appropriateness of the book, as noted in the committee's response, the school library journal indicates the book is appropriate for grades 9 and up, as does Booklist. It was also a Booklist Editor's Choice winner for Books for Youth in 2022. We have heard some content from a Washington Post interview at one point, which I went back to reread, and noted that the question from the interviewer in that interview ends with, "They make it sound like it's marketed for 6-year-olds." And Kobabe's reply in that interview was, "It keeps being called a children's book." This was after Senator Kennedy had brought it to the floor. Senator Kennedy implied it was a children's book, but I think that's coming from a misreading of the comic book form. Genderqueer is a comic and in full color, but that doesn't mean it's for children. I originally wrote it for my parents and then older teens, we've heard this part before, who were already asking these questions about themselves. I don't recommend this book for kids. And then going to the PEN America interview, which Kim previously mentioned, if I'd had a book to read like this, specifically when I was like a freshman in high school, it would have saved me years of questioning and confusion about my identity, and that was in May of this year. So I agree with the findings and recommendations of the committee. I'd like to thank them for their work. As we've noted, this book is not being pushed on anyone. It is part of the policy IJJ that we seek to provide a wide range of educational materials at all levels of difficulty with diverse appeal and representing various points of view. No one is required to read this book. Everyone does not need to like it or agree with it. It's not being forced on students. It's not part of the curriculum. It is, as was written in the committee's report, one of over 14,000 books in the library. And for some, as we've heard, it will be a lifeline, a reflection, a validation. And for others, it might be that window into someone else's experience and a way to develop empathy and understanding. I do believe that removing this book from our collection would be synonymous with banning it. And I support the rights of our students and their parents or guardians to make their own decisions that are right for themselves and their families. If parents or guardians do not want their student accessing this book, as we've heard, they can easily make that request. I believe that there are also legal reasons, which we don't need to necessarily get into, for not banning this book, but that, a dislike of ideas contained in the book would go against decisions that have been made at the Supreme Court level as well. And I think that we have heard some indication that it is not just the couple pages that have been objected to, but more of the ideas overall in the book that are presented and that are reflected. Let me just see if there's anything else that feels important to share from this thinking that I've done as we've gone through this process. I do want to note, as others have also said, that this has been a challenging process for our students and our community, especially those in the LGBTQIA+ community who have felt targeted by book challenges such as this around the nation. And I do want you to hear me unequivocally express my support for all our students in this district, and that support is not zero-sum. So by giving it to our LGBTQIA+ students, I'm not taking it away from others. It's inclusive of all our students, all our educators, all staff, and all administrators. But it does feel important during this time to expressly express that support. And again, noting that that's not mean that I do not support our students and community members who identify and present themselves in more traditional normative ways. And I do believe that we have a mental health crisis, but it is not the existence of non-normative gender identities or sexual orientations, but it is contributed to by a lack of acceptance and support for LGBTQIA youth. And there's certainly plenty of evidence from NAMI and others to support that, and I think we've heard a little bit of that tonight as well. So I will be voting to keep the book in our high school library. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Tim?
So I too want to thank everyone, regardless of where you stand on this issue, just for the bravery and the thought that was displayed tonight, particularly from the students. It was really moving. I value all the comments and the thought from the boards as well, and the messages you sent us over the last couple weeks. And I made a commitment to not decide how I'd move forward until I heard from you tonight. So I want to thank the review committee for their initial review, and I want to commend Mr. Jordan for publicly standing up for his principles. That's not easy in this climate. Regardless of tonight's vote, my hope is that people truly heard the concerns of their neighbors. I know quite a few people that were too scared to speak tonight and because they were afraid of being shunned. And I fear we've become a society and now a community that deals in absolutes, which just isn't how I think about things. I shudder when I hear books. I shudder when I hear that books like this are a form of grooming or indoctrination. And spending just 5 minutes talking with our librarian or staff, and it becomes clear that the intentions are good. I'm also challenged by those calling this book banning. I don't consider this book banned from MIW or the middle school even though it's not there. And if we do equate this as book banning, I don't even know why we would have this process. To me, these are terms that are used for the purpose of being on the right side rather than getting it right. It's a shame because I think there's an opportunity for our community to grow from these conversations, whether that's understanding more about the population we serve or about the standards we parent by. Multiple things can be true at once. You can support LGBTQ+ students, yet feel this book has content not appropriate for high school students, just as a person can think this book has merit while not supporting adult content in our schools. You can respect the role of a librarian while respecting the role of a parent. For the record, I think it should be a very high bar to remove a book from a library, especially after it's been through this process. What I'm about to say is about genderqueer, not any class of books or books in general. I think this book serves an important community at an important time, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to read it, like those that have shared that tonight. I agree with almost everything the review committee said, except I admit I do question whether or not genderqueer passes Section D of Policy IJJ, which says, take into consideration the varied maturity levels of students served. I don't believe this book was intended for all ages served in our high school, and therefore may not meet this standard. The review committee references the American Library Association's rating of 9th grade and above, but in my research, this is an outlier. Most rating systems, including the National Education Association and Common Sense Media, show at least 16 years and above, with many calling for 18+. Perhaps more telling, has been referenced tonight, the author says older teens and above. Those that don't name an age, but grade level, an understandable attempt to make it easier for schools to operationally have in high school libraries rather than what's developmentally appropriate. My daughter will be 13 when she enters high school, while I was 15. There's a reason why development, either in psychology or legally, use age and not grade level. I don't question the right for the author to make certain artistic choices. It's M's story, and I think it's a really powerful one. And I see why the author made the decisions M did. However, when the content includes referencing an active porn site, uses very graphic language, and includes mature images, as a parent, it's reasonable to want safeguards, regardless of the greater context. Take Schindler's List, for example. It's extremely valuable and relevant to a vulnerable population, but due to the content, it's rated R, requiring an adult to rent it when we did that, or see it in theaters. The rating doesn't make it any less important. Given everything I've heard, read, and understand about our policies and the law, I plan on voting to keep the book because of the policies and rights for parents to make individual requests for their child. But I'd like to make a recommendation to the district. This book remain available in our library, but require deeper conversations with an adult or guardian below the age of 16, which is the legal age for consent in Maine, and what seems to have the most consensus, including from the author, whom said it's appropriate for older teens, not 13, which my daughter will be. I understand this is unlikely to happen, but it just feels right for me policy-wise. I hear people say the kids have access to things much more graphic than this, and that may be true, but we also have safeguards for those things in school and out. And I understand it may be inevitable as a parent, but I haven't given in yet. My kids are very young, so I've got time to give in. I want to end this with this. I spent 30 minutes on Friday speaking with our high school librarian who spoke tonight, and I heard how much she cares about our kids and takes time to support them. I encourage all of you to reach out to our librarians and share your thoughts and concerns about your students. Know that you have options as a parent, but also know that I have full confidence that our staff will keep our kids safe.
So, of course, when this book was brought up, like many others, I had some questions. After reading the complete memoir, I now realize I was questioning whether this book belongs in our library because I was not given the full, needed, and valuable context. To be honest, I didn't even know this book existed prior to this discussion being brought up, much less in our library, because it has not been pushed on our students in the library. And I've been in the library almost every single day for the past 2 years. I've talked to a lot of my peers about genderqueer, and I can say that they feel the same way. This book obviously takes a level of maturity to read, like so many other valuable books do. Books I've read on my own and even in my English classes often take a high level of maturity to read because sexual and graphic content is simply a part of most books students read at this age. That being said, the more graphic and sensitive portions of the books I've read are not what I remember most vividly. What I do remember and take away from these books are the main messages they convey, the conversations I've had surrounding the book, the author's writing style, character development, and much, much more. I doubt I would have chosen to pick up and read this book on my own, but I'm glad I have. Among the many things I gained from reading this book, one of the most significant things was perspective. I was able to recognize that these topics are things people I go to school with could be experiencing, that something so easy and simple for me to do, like wearing the color pink or shaving my legs, could be things people in my classes, my friends, and even my teachers are uncomfortable doing. The lessons and messages in this book are valuable to not only young people confused about who they are, but they are valuable to a wide variety of people. One of my main reasons for joining the board as a student was to find ways to make this school a place every student feels safe and welcome in, that they have a place they look forward going to, that they don't feel negatively towards school. I like to think we do have a pretty welcoming community at the high school, but I know that this is not always true. And if this book can help give perspective or security to my peers and future high schoolers, then it should definitely stay in our library.
I would like to echo many of the sentiments that were talked about tonight by my fellow board members. And as one of the student representatives to our board, I have tried to do my job, bring the student perspective to the board. I truly appreciate the courageous students that have come to talk tonight. Your voices have been heard and are valued. Prior to this meeting and hearing all of the opinions shared in public comment, I have talked with the students in our high school. I've discussed the issue with students and have tried to get the varied perspectives on this subject. Greeley teaches kids to think critically, contemplate different sides of an issue, and speak up when their voices must be heard. We have had class discussions about the issue that sits before the board, and in every discussion I have had, students are thoroughly engaged and have thought about these issues. I presented the pages and panels that have been disputed with provided context and have discussed the arguments on both sides. On each occasion where I have spoken with my peers, students have felt confused and asked, why would a book like this get removed? On each occasion, students have supported keeping this book in our high school library. In hearing others' opinions and after reading the graphic memoir twice, I have come to a similar decision. In my own opinion, and that of many of the students at the high school, I support the decisions of our librarians and our educators and the thoughtful committee that reviewed this memoir. And because of that, I support genderqueer remaining in our high school library.
brief, mostly because I agree with my fellow board members, and I agree with a lot of our community that's gotten up to speak tonight, which has been, I think, incredibly valuable to hear all the comments. So thank you for coming. I will also be voting to uphold the committee's recommendation. I very much trust their experience. I trust their expertise. I trust that the policy was taken seriously, and I trust that because the written response and the explanation for why the committee wanted to keep the book in the library was so well done, so well thought out. So thank you so much for the work that you put in. It's very, very much appreciated. I don't consider the book to be pornography. I agree with Kim on this. I, too, looked it up. I don't think that the images in this book, the images that we've seen many times in big poster board size, when the book is read in context, they lose that gotcha value because they are part of the story. They weren't put in the story to titillate and to get a response. They're simply part of the author's story. So I, too, agree with Kim. I think that part of the argument just floundered. I was really happy to see Jen Weisner here and glad that she quoted some data about the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, which found that, a percentage of our Maine high schoolers identify as queer. And I don't know what percentage that is at our high school. I don't know if it's the same 13.8 or whatever, or if it's 5% or if it's one student. But when I think about what we're doing tonight in this vote, I find value in thinking about it from the other side, not in should we ban this book, but what is the harm of removing this book, and to whom would we be doing that harm? And that's what's really, I think, most important for me, is that I think that if we take a resource away from a kid that needs it, and we know that many kids who identify as queer are not treated equally, do face more bullying, do face more discrimination, don't necessarily have as many adults to turn to. So if we take away a resource from that vulnerable group, that to me becomes totally unconscionable and cruel and wrong. So I've found great value in looking at this process from that standpoint. So that is why I will be voting to uphold the committee's recommendation.
Anyone else? Okay. So thank you for fellow board members. I know this has been a challenging process for us, for our community, for our schools, but it's important to have this process, and I just want to reflect on that for a moment, and again thank the previous boards for their work on this policy, and certainly our librarians and review committee that got us to this point tonight. It's important for the district to have this process for parents to challenge the selection of educational materials. And one of the reasons I'm sitting here on this board is because of how much I trust this district with my children and the experience that they have had in this district. At that point when I got elected, it was through the middle school level. I'll be voting to accept the recommendation of the review committee. I so value how much care our teachers, administrators, and librarians and everyone else in this district has taken for our children, and I know what it takes as a parent to have your child leave the house every day and know that they're going to a place where they feel seen. My children have felt very seen in this district, and I so appreciate the voices of students who have spoken tonight, and I think that's such the shining light that we see the critical thinking that they've built and grown in this district. And one of our board goals this year was to be able to actively involve and integrate student perspectives, insights, and feedback into our decisions, policies, and decision making. And so having their voices not only on the board but during public comment is so important. I believe that this book in no way warrants exclusion from our high school library, and while explicit and sometimes even shocking at points, I know I was uncomfortable the first time I read it. The book is also a touching memoir about the author's struggle with their gender identity, relationship with family, growth as a young adult, and their coming of age. The mere existence of sexual activity in the book is, my opinion, not a valid reason to remove it and overturn the decision of the high school librarians in the review committee. In fact, upon rereading the book, the scenes involving sexual activity are also scenes that encourage the reader to dive into issues of consent, communication with partners, and having bodily agency. And such important lessons for our teens, including mine, it really actually helped me think about conversations I probably should be having that I hadn't really thought about yet as my kids get older. The content it's not included to be salacious or titillating, but to really advance the story. It's just so important for parents to believe that they are partners in their students' education. And the barrier to challenge materials is actually pretty low, and the process of review is appropriately thorough and designed to gather multiple opinions and make reasonable and informed decisions. I approached this challenge with an open mind and a commitment to seeing the process through fairly and openly while adhering to our policy. And unfortunately, as we end this process, I fear we're simply taken it on as a political stunt that has taken up the time of our librarians, our board, our teachers and administrators in our community. And boy, I know we have a lot that needs to get done every single day, from sidewalks being iced to kids getting their lunches to librarians reviewing new books to go into our future hands of the next generation. And I just really want, again, to thank the board for their time, for the community, and for our administration for moving us through this process, so we're able to be here tonight at hopefully the end of this appeal. So I would like to call for a vote. So the motion on the table is to accept the recommendation from the review committee that the book Genderqueer remains in the high school library. All in favor? So it's unanimous. Thank you. All right.
Very historic moment. Yeah. You guys are going to leave. We're going to vote on bans.
We're going to vote on it at school.
We get to talk about the school again. I know. Nobody's saying for the architect.
What if the architect is the most controversial part of this meeting?
That's why we need an educated populace.
I gave up.
That was one of his
the best man.
That was very nice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that, but I didn't want to do it. And we don't need to. They don't live here.
Yeah.
She had the cutest one for gum.
Oh, I thought those were chairs.
Oh, aren't they? They're tomatoes. Yeah. They're like a brand. They're sprinkles. Oh, really? And normally they come in 2 and a half inches, but I found a big cup. So
I hadn't realized that.
I saw one.
These are amazing.
I saw this, I think today.
I did yesterday. I just got a text from a former coworker who lives in a different community. Just out of interest.
So that I threw it at it. So now I feel like, well,
Yeah.
Listed Scott as the contact for this event.
Okay.
That was why I went there.
Too bad we couldn't have this governmental process at the federal level.
Jeez.
At
Can
the
you imagine
federal
like
level.
congressional grandstanding? Ugh.
Somebody brought them in to the office.
Yeah, I think
Not
there will
close
be
enough to the people.
a theme with the books that are brought.
Oh, these are
So
fun.
yeah, there will be more to come.
I don't really eat that much chocolate. It's like great. Oh, that's white chocolate. I know. No, Bill's here.
Well, I was thinking actually.
So I guess I've never seen her. I know Audrey. I've just never seen her last week.
Oh, there's so many books that
a bunch of stuff.
Just the
Yeah. She won't just work to get it. Sometimes
Yes,
you get the reform it.
I know Audrey that goes to
Oh, yeah.
never had to like pronounce.
But I had to do right. Well, that's usually just like this by the first day.
Yeah.
Not by the
And then like, yeah, see her written down. Yeah. As soon as Christina got her facilities chair. Everyone have all their questions ready.
It's a good social studies study, isn't it? Yes. I mean, an example of direct democracy.
Christina.
Yeah, no, that.
Christina. Hello, Christina.
Do you want to make the motion?
Oh, sure.
Let me get the words up first.
All right, so I think we're ready to resume. Just took a brief break. Is it on? Yeah.
We're not amplified,
Mi-
right?
Mine's on.
Oh, yours is.
Just mine. Okay, so we're going to move to a vote on the architect selection. I'm going to ask for a motion.
I move that the board select Stephen Blatt Architects for the concept design of the proposed elementary project to be located on the district's property acquired from William D. Wyatt and on the district's adjoining main campus, and authorize the superintendent of schools in consultation with the district's legal counsel to negotiate, execute, and deliver that contract on such items as the superintendent deems in the interest of the district.
I'll second.
Thanks, Megan. Any questions? Great.
I was just curious, so I know that we were choosing between two possible vendors, Stephen Blatt Architects, but then also Oak Point, who has designed the building at 80 Gray Road and had previously designed a building for on-campus. I'm wondering if you could share any information that they gave regarding that previous on-campus rendering, and if it'd be possible to use that concept design again in terms, I'm just trying to think this through to be the most fiscally responsible for the district.
I'll start off and you can follow. He did, Oak Point did bring up the 2020 plan. Is that what you're referencing? The initial interview request was to address the acquired land. They chose not to recommend that site. So we, other than an initial preliminary sketch, he didn't elaborate on that site much. He did talk about the traffic flow or otherwise. And then he did go over to discussing the 2020 plan. it was challenging because not all of the committee members had been on the board and had, myself included, and had not thorough information about that except for what he was presenting right then on the spot.
Yeah, I can add to that just a little
Right,
bit.
add more.
Just with the couple of acres of land, 2.3 acres for this property, and then there was a similar amount of land in the 2020 or 2021 plan. The difference is that the superintendent's office was going to be moved at that time, if we recall, and that land, that parking lot next to the soup's office, was all going to be included as part of the land part, and then there was also a house in the front that was part of that piece. So that design was really developed for that parcel of land. So the difference would be, I don't think there was any way to take the design from 2021 and put it onto the site that is now being considered. And like Christina said, that was discussed, that there were parts of that plan that were discussed, parking and things that have to be done to the campus to upgrade in order to make this work. But I think that was really the gist behind why this wouldn't work. The design they had wouldn't work in this spot.
It was pre-K through 2.
That's true. It was
Not pre-K through
That's
1.
true. It was a pre-K through 2 as well. It was a bigger space.
It's true.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. I mean, I figured it would have been hard anyway, but I just wanted to have that out there, so thank you for...
I have a process question. So in comparing the two responses, was there any kind of rating system or an evaluation that was somewhat more objective than just I have a gut feeling that this is the right choice to go with? I'm so unfortunate that I missed that meeting. I wish I could have been there. And Christina, thank you for sending the follow-up email. But I'm just curious about process, about how we landed, where you guys landed so clearly 3-0.
So I couldn't hear all that, but the question is basically what our process was?
Yep.
So we interviewed both of them, as you know, asked them the same questions, the questions ahead of time, and sent their responses ahead of time. And then I had asked board members that week, did you all offer any other questions? As long as we asked both of them the same questions, that was fair. So we did that, and some were yours that we hadn't already asked.
Mm-hmm.
The overall, there were a lot of very detailed questions, and we got more detailed answers from one than another. It wasn't based on feeling so much. That was certainly one of the questions. What's our comfort level with how much they're going to stay in contact with us? How available will they be? There was a distinction there as well, but that was one of many detailed answers. And it was unanimous, all three of us. And I did not know how the others were going to be. I didn't know how I was going to be voting before I went into it, but came away very confident that the choice we made is the correct one.
I think you'd find there was definitely criteria that was utilized in that selection process. It wasn't who we felt the best about. There was actually criteria. No rating sheet like a 1 through 10 or anything like that. It was basically criteria that the committee used in terms of a selection process for the architect in the on-campus for the on-campus version, knowing well that the 80 Gray Road property is still in play until we come up with a concept design.
Megan or Denny, did you want to add anything to what I said?
No process, but I will echo that the vote was unanimous, and it was relatively brisk, just because I think we from what we heard, there was one choice that really seemed better. So there wasn't a lot of deliberation. One choice sort of stood out for a variety of reasons.
I just want to be clear, the objection of the question was more centered on what I'm familiar with like an RFP, which is my understanding that we don't really follow the P part of it. But it sounds like the criteria, I don't know if it's where you can really measure if we have written like, oh, okay, this performed better in price, this performed better in terms of responsiveness or timeline and stuff like that. So I was just curious for the public, is there something available of how they measured against that for the public to be able to see why we chose one architect over the other? That was that.
Well, it's not an RFP process, it's an RFQ process,
Right.
which is a request for qualifications. And I think the committee as a whole felt that the more qualified architect for this process, based on the criteria that we had, there is no, other than the questions that we had and the responses to the written questions, along with what we answered in the notes that we have, there's no rating sheet. But there is certainly a full committee that felt that the more qualified architect, while both are very qualified architects, the more qualified for the on-campus version because of Steve Blatt's past experience with our campus, 4 successful referendum projects on our campus with Mr. Blatt, Steve Blatt Architects, and also his experience and knowledge of the campus were all factors that really led to him being the architect of choice. So that would be the criteria that I would have, looked at hanging a hat on.
And I was able to attend. I'm not on the facilities committee, but Kim and I were able to also attend the meeting on Friday. And I would say that they both presented sort of draft proposals of what the on-campus design would look like. And the one that was presented by Stephen Blatt really looked like it was going to meet some of the needs that we've expressed as a board and through the facilities committee process. So while I think, as we said, there's a list of questions, and I think those proposals, they all shared as well from both architects, and the one that was presented by Stephen Blatt as the draft addressed parking, some of the concerns around traffic flow, and the design of the building seemed to be really fit nicely in that spot of land. And of course, this is all very draft. We're voting to have them move forward with an actual concept design, but even the work that they put into getting ready for that meeting was impressive.
I also would add, you asked about the public, access. I just want to point out that it was a public meeting. It was announced, agenda, everything, whoever could have come, board or public. And I also want to note that before we deliberated, the facilities committee, I did invite those in the room, those who did attend, what their impressions were, what their thoughts were, whatever, including Don Foster, who, on the ground has to directly, is that the right name? Did I use the right name? Don Foster. Everyone shifted, like, wait. So to see what his prior experience was with the 2 different architects. And I thought that was very valuable to hear from him as well. So, like I said, I had a lot of confidence in where we landed.
And just one of the items that was highlighted on the list of questions too was around costs, and I think that we might be able to address that with the designs that were discussed with Stephen Blatt. So that was, I think, a good reassurance from those conversations. And we, have been thrilled with Oak Point. We're happy that we still have the option with what they've designed on 80 Gray Road. So this is nothing to say that we haven't been happy with the work that we've done with them. Just looking at the new parcel of land on campus, the experience that Stephen Blatt's had on campus and his innovative way of looking at that space was really, I love looking at overhead maps. And so the ones that he presented just were a really nice way to envision what could be happening in that little corner with the new land.
Yeah. Oak Point's still going to be working with us on the revolving renovation fund projects that we have in the works right now. So we'll still be working with them, and they've done a great job for us in that respect as well. So it's not one better than the other in my mind. It was who was the best fit for this particular concept design on that particular piece of property.
Yeah, I would just add to that I had skipped over the part that I was going to say in my little speaker notes that I think I skipped over, that we're very fortunate to have 2 excellent firms to work with, kind of like first order problem here. But for this particular project, it really seems a good fit.
questions? All right. I call for a vote to approve the selection of Stephen Blatt Architects. Okay. All in favor? Thank you. Yeah, we're very thrilled to take this next step and really be able to dig into the details on what building on campus could look like. So thank you. So can I get a motion for the approval of the lease purchase of 2 school vans?
I'd like to take this one because I'd like to move with an amendment. I move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of 2 2024 Chevy trucks in the principal amount of $186,500 be adopted in the form presented to this meeting. And I'd like this amended to replace Chevy trucks with vans. Both in the motion and in the supporting document.
There was a little confusion there.
You didn't buy some trucks?
There were no trucks. There were student vans.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Christina. Any questions, Annika?
Well, I just wanted to quickly say, because not all board members were engaged with this, but I did have some communication with Jeff and Scott. I had asked when we first found out about the need for the vans about an electric option and whether that had been explored, and it sounded like that was not, given the timeline of this need and the availability of electric options at the time, that was not able to be acted upon in this circumstance. And so had also just wondered at that point what our plan is in terms of, I know we have short and long-term facilities plans, and whether we might have similar short and long-term transportation plans that would involve electrifying our transportation, so that if the need were to arise again, how we might be in a better position to make a EV purchase at that time.
Yeah, we're very interested in electrifying our bus fleet. In fact, we've applied for funds, state funds to do so, but you didn't receive those funds. So previously we've done that. And I believe, Denny, you had helped us at one point with looking at electrifying our bus fleet, if I recall. Am I recalling that correctly? A couple of years ago? I remember. Anyway, I think, these vans will be very important. We would have liked to get electric buses, and I think there will be more state funds down the road. So we're hoping to tap into those. Only, I think, 10 or 11 districts were funded in the state when that application went through before. They are very prohibitive, cost prohibitive right now to do that until the price comes down or there's more funding that's available. It's very difficult to do that right now.
We did pursue looking for electric vans. That was my first choice when I talked with Phil and Rachel at the bus garage. We do have a improvement plan and a replacement schedule for our bus fleet and our vans as well. And I think what you'll see going forward is the 10-passenger vans that we are looking at now. We're going to start, those are now starting to age. We've had them for some time, and we'll be looking to replace those with electric options. And if we have that lead time available to us to be able to order those, get them in place, and we can look at doing that as well. As you mentioned, in this particular case, because of bus driver shortage, not being able to get students to paths unless, because we were sending a bus, so we needed to convert over to 14-passenger vans, 2 of them, and it's also been very helpful for athletics. So, that's really why we had to jump on them when we did, and we were fortunate to find at least 2 vans that were available.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question for Jeff and Scott. So I crossed paths with a bus driver who was concerned about this, and I understand and sold on the flexibility that this offers you guys. Like we talked about, we don't, bus driver shortage, but their perspective was that it actually took away opportunities for them to take routes to earn, potential more money in that sense. So just wondering if you guys could comment on that and how these things get scheduled, and by doing something like this and giving it to, let's say, a coach, have we taken an opportunity from, paying or keeping good bus drivers because we're worried about that retention in that area?
Well, due to where we're sitting right now, there are no opportunities other than what we have available, and we're not going to remove regular bus drivers from their regular bus runs to give them trips because that wouldn't be the safest thing to do. Drivers aren't, in their collective bargaining agreement, aren't entitled to additional runs or that it would exceed 40 hours in a given week. We try to keep all drivers up to that 40 hours if we can. But at this point, we're in a triage stage of just trying to get students to and from school every day and just trying to meet the demands of athletics. I don't see this as a way in which we're trying to take trips away from drivers. We're just trying to fill a basic need at this moment. A lot of times there'll be trips that some of our activities go during the daytime that we wouldn't send a driver or a large 66 passenger bus. In any case, we use vans and have been using vans for some period of time, whether it's for our special needs runs in the morning or it's for midday activities that staff members might want to use to go out into the community with students to work in the community and those types of things. So this isn't a way to try and diminish opportunity for drivers. It's a way to fill a need right now, and certainly we want our drivers to get those extra trips when they get back to being fully staffed.
I understand that, and I get it operationally. I just hope that the bus drivers understand that as well. This could have just been one person, or it could be a generalized kind of feeling. So I just want the board to be aware of that. And, when things like this happen, big decisions like this happen within that department, it's thinking about how we communicate this to them and how this is a benefit, I think will go a long way for morale, from at least what I heard from this one person I crossed paths with.
Yeah. I met with the drivers on Friday. We had a conversation of a number of different things, and certainly if anybody had a concern about that, they're more than welcome to bring it to my attention during those kind of meetings, or I'm available in the office. Somebody can stop in and see me if they have concerns. But again, it's no intent to try to diminish the number of trips for drivers. It's filling a basic need that we have now. Districts around us are running double bus runs, and we've been able to avoid that at this point just because of some of the creative solutions that we've had in the district.
Any other questions? All right, I'll call a vote. All in favor of the approval of the lease purchase of the 2 school vans? Great, thank you. On to the superintendent's report. Oh, look, you got yours up and ready. No problems there.
I don't know what's going on there. I think once you put it up there, and you haven't been in the space for a while, the thing comes right to the top is what happened with this case. Nothing to do. Do you want to rerun your presentation? Let's do it. Anyway, at Mabel I. Wilson School, first grader Forrest Bogner Williams got to be principal for an hour. I believe this is in concert with the PTO. I should put that in there. They had recess and lunch duty, got to talk to and visit his kindergarten teacher and explored the school. He was all in charge. Someday, maybe, Forrest, you can be the principal. Also at Mabel I. Wilson School, a lot of art has been done. I love to look at the art that the students have been doing when I go into the school. This was a second grade leaf art project that they had done. A lot of creative art all over the school. Love seeing these in the display cabinets. At GMS 6-8, the middle school drama club held a video call with Nathan Gahan, who is an owner and CEO of Showtown Theatricals and Broadway, and a Tony Award winner, and that's Broadway, New York. He shared with students what it's like to manage and produce Broadway shows. We've had a lot of these where we have artists who will do a virtual call with students. We've had a number of these over the last couple of years, and it's really exciting, whether it's a well-known author. We've also had well-known authors come in person. But for students to have opportunities to actually dialogue with folks that might not be able to come in person, this has been a really great experience. I know our librarians actually do a lot of that too with students and doing virtual calls. Also at GMS 6-8, 8th graders studied the Revolutionary War. I was walking by this the other day with Mari Trabolcock, and I said, "What is this?" I love history. I always perk up. What's this? Outside of the 8th grade, actually Pete Gillingham's 8th grade classroom where he teaches history. And this was a lot of the actual titles on these replica newspapers were about the Battle of Bunker Hill, which obviously very exciting because we live nearby it and drive by it many times. At the high school, I'm sure that Tommy and Sophia will want to talk about this, so I am not going to steal your thunder. I really won't. But there were some images, and if you want me to put these back up when you're talking, I will. But I know that they were, a lot of students were very excited about the extended advisory activities last week. And also, Mr. Francis and I were in a classroom not too long ago. We were just walking around, and in Emily Banks's science course, one of her science courses, students were learning how to use light to illuminate fingerprints. And I'm probably not saying this right, but it was all around forensics and DNA. And they were using certain technology to look at it. And I actually looked through I don't even know what it was called. Maybe Tommy and Sophia have done this. But it was really fascinating. And this is just talk about, how is it related to something you might actually do someday. They were talking about forensics and DNA and how you can actually use fingerprint technology that we know about that exists today and how to use it. And it was really quite fascinating. You could see Mr. Francis was very excited about this and was trying to figure this out as well, and students were looking at this through a tool that they had to look at the light. Obviously, I'm not going to steal anyone's thunder as well. I know that Leanne talked about this already, Rangers Rock. Addition this week is Alice in Wonderland, and unfortunately I was not able to watch the play. I was out of town all weekend, but I've heard so many good things about it, and can't wait to see the performance in March. And in the superintendent's notebook this week, just want to let people know, if you haven't been reading the newsletters, the district newsletters past couple weeks, that's okay. You can catch up. I have been putting a lot of school safety information in our newsletters, and we also have the archived ones that we've been putting at the end of each newsletter edition. So if you want to learn about our district's school safety, I'm doing a multi-part series, and this week will be part 4 of, I'm not sure how many there will be at this point, probably 5 or 6 parts to this until I'm finished with this topic. And also in the superintendent's notebook, just want to say the Foundation 51's annual holiday drive, and one of our community partners, they do a lot of work along with PTO. Foundation 51 is working closely with social workers in our district to help make the holidays and long winter more merry and bright for some families. Last year they were able to help 30 families in the district with a record-breaking request, and this year the request is slightly more than last. And they're looking for your help. Please go to their website, www.foundation51.org, and please consider donating this season. And any amount is tax deductible, so I want to thank anyone that will do that. And I thought it would be nice, after we talked about the 14-passenger van, we did spot one out on the road and had a picture taken, so already in use.
That's the Chevy truck.
This is the Chevy truck. Gotta love it. I always think of Chevy Chase when I think of Chevy. I don't know why. I guess Christmas Vacation or holiday. What was that vacation one that he did? A lot of movies. But anyway, this is one of the 2 14-passenger vans. Already got our logo on it and already being used. So that's my report.
Great, thank you. So moving on to the committee reports, we're going to start with students.
Okay, so as Mr. Porter mentioned, this past enrichment advisory was last Thursday. It was a hit. My choice was summer song bingo and drinking tea. I have to admit, I was a little unsure of what I got myself into, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was actually a lot of fun. The summer songs brought me back to summer, and the tea brought me to winter, so it was really good. And then this Thursday, we have an extra long advisory with juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, where a guest speaker will be talking about how to live in a digital world. Seniors, I don't know what you're doing. You guys are doing something different. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go because the AP and IB Arts students will be on a field trip to Colby College Museum of Art. This is a really good opportunity for advanced art students to experience a new context of looking at art outside of the classroom. As an IB art student, I'm really excited to be able to do this because taking art classes has really helped me understand how to actually look at art and formulate thoughts about it. So whenever I've been to art museums in the past, I have been like, okay, cool, art, let's move on. So I'm excited to have this background to be able to actually have some thoughts about what I'm looking at. And then the Greeley girls hockey team is having a really good start. They've had a little bit of a sticky past year or so because they lost some really key players, but they won their last game against Mount Ararat, so that's very exciting. 3-1.
Sophia, I have to jump in for a minute. So that's one of the places I was at Colby College this weekend, and I've been up there many times and thought, I'm going to go to that museum. There's always like those banners and everything like that. So I actually went. I had a few minutes and I had 30 minutes, and I was like, I'm going to go over there and see it. And there's a Lincoln, there's a lot of interesting art in there, but there was something on Abraham Lincoln that they had done a statue, and I was just like, I got to see that.
I'm excited.
But a lot of really neat rooms in there, and I was very impressed.
You got your history.
Yes, got a lot of history in it. Yeah, so it's funny you said that. And I also had a great time during my enrichment. I played volleyball, but other activities, as can be seen on the presentation, are gingerbread house making, wreath making, and there was also upcycling wrapping paper where in time for the holidays, students were able to make more sustainable gift wrapping where they used potatoes to make stamps, and also with some plant matter and leftover ribbon, so that was super cool. But also this past weekend, as also in the presentation, was the play, and it was really amazing to see all my peers and classmates. I've always enjoyed going to the Greeley plays, even when I was a little kid, but seeing all the people that you spend all your time in school with it's even cooler to see them really shine on stage. So that was a great production. And speaking of Alice, we've been doing a lot of things in advisory recently, and this, as you know, this past Thursday we did the extended enrichment, and then today we reviewed the Alice protocol, going over school safety and what to do in the case of an intruder. And then, as Sophia said, this upcoming Thursday will be an extended advisory with the social media speaker. The seniors will be having a class meeting, and also on the seniors' mind right now is college decisions that are rolling in, specifically early action and early decision that are rolling in any day now. I know that a few of my classmates have already gotten their decisions back, some very excited people who now know what college they're going to, and the rest will come throughout the rest of December.
So you don't have an update, is what you're saying.
I don't have an update, but maybe by next meeting.
Okay, fingers crossed. Great, thank you. Moving on to the Community Engagement Committee. Megan?
We had a really productive meeting last week, not during the weekend, definitely during the week. Some things that we're working on are finalizing the FAQs in regards to the new school project, finalizing the FAQs in regards to 80 Gray, starting work on the school board website, more to come on that, and saying yes to more board updates in different avenues like the superintendent's newsletter, the town notes from town hall and the crier, and two new things for this iteration of the board. We'll be updating the town council and the select board in the upcoming weeks. In-person events are still very much on our mind. None are materializing just yet, but I'll keep you posted.
Thanks, Megan. Finance?
Finance met last Thursday. We got an update on fiscal 24, and things are on track there. If you want details, feel free to reach out. We also went through the fiscal 25 budget schedule. Things are a little bit different this year because it's a more compressed timeline because of requirements for absentee ballots. So some key dates are around the beginning of March. Jeff will be presenting the budget to the school board at our meeting. This is 2 weeks earlier than it usually is. And then the school board budget workshop, where we go through all of the different cost centers on the big printouts. That will be on March 18th. The budget meeting will be on May 9th, and then we get to vote on it again as a public, as the public at the ballot box on June 11th. So that is our update.
Thank you. Policy.
This evening we have first read for the board of policy BED, remote participation in school board meetings. And this is a policy that was added during COVID, and the biggest change you'll see is in red regarding language on subcommittee meetings being held remotely. And our next meeting is tomorrow.
So for the first read, I think does anyone have any questions on the policy, the remote participation in school boards?
If people don't have questions at this moment either, feel free just to email them to me as well in between meetings.
Great, thank you. And then facilities, we've had some updates.
So in the interest of time, we met with the architects last Friday for our meeting and came to a recommendation that the board has since accepted, and our next meeting will be in January. Need to check with some others. I understand that January 12 is the date that the concept design will be done, and we are to review it in facilities.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to negotiate that. That was a tentative date, so we'll have to talk with Stephen Blatt and make sure that that works for him, but that is what we're hoping happens.
Okay.
And actually, the facilities committee can just say it will happen, but I'm sure we'll have to do some negotiating with him on that.
Okay. Yeah. So our next meeting's in January. Not sure which date yet.
Denny?
I've talked with Christina about, and I think Scott has plans to bring us up to date on the solar farm project. That's a long-range plan. I think it was interesting that Fortunato Mueller testified today. He owns Revision Energy, which is the person we chose in an RFQ to do this project. So I guess there's some legal issues associated with MSADs and whatnot, but
yeah, look forward to getting that update. Okay, next is curriculum.
No updates since last week.
Yeah. And then equity?
We have a meeting this Wednesday. Lawrence Alexander will be joining us remotely because I can't remember, it's his son's birthday. I can't remember, there was something. But that will give us a chance to discuss with Lawrence the discussions that we've been having about the equity plan. I can assure the board that we really, really are committed to getting this before all of you. We also want to hear an update from the district leadership team, which Susie will be providing us just on the responsibilities that the plan calls for from the district leadership team. And so just some other amendments we'll be making, so it'll be a very busy meeting, but we are confident that we are really close. So.
Great. Thanks, Sam. I know we're all looking forward to that. And then we just have the ad hoc committee reports. Has there been any ad hoc committees?
I will just note that the Wellness Committee is having their first meeting tomorrow afternoon as well.
Okay. So tomorrow. Any other ad hoc?
I guess along those lines, so Profile of a Learner is having their second meeting next week.
Great. Any other ad hoc committee reports? Okay. So communications. I don't think I had anything in particular.
I just want to ask for the books, if you could return them to me, because they actually belong to another school district. So I have to return them to the other district.
Thanks. This is my copy that I have.
Okay, yeah, if it's your copy, obviously. Only if you borrowed it.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something for communication. I just want to commend the chair for a really well-run meeting tonight.
Yeah.
This could have been very difficult, and it went very smoothly. So thank you.
I second that.
Thank you. Heather, thank you. I appreciate that. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, God, yes. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?